annual Micro Four Third Photographers Meetup. This is part 3. I split it up this year to smaller groups because there's just so many new Micro Four Third creators out there and photographers that I wanted to have in this year's stream. And that's a great thing. I love how, at least the Micro Four Thirds community continues to grow and has been really an awesome community at that, because everyone's so friendly, so knowledgeable. Everyone wants to be very helpful. And today I have 4 more great guests for us today. And I'm very proud and honored to have them here with me. It's really a privilege, and I look forward to hearing what they have to say, their thoughts and feedback on Micro Four Thirds. And of course, we also had many new releases. Specifically, the OM3 is the most recent one, and that's a really exciting camera. We're all going to be OM3 buddies here very soon. But let me start with Jimmy here, and Jimmy. Hey Jimmy, how are you?
Hey, how are you? I'm good. I'm good.
Good.
Finally able to get out of bed and start talking and doing things.
Yeah. Jimmy, for those of you who don't know, was got the flu or something a couple weeks ago in Japan, and I'm glad you can make it today and recovering. And I've always been, I've been following your channel, since I started
Yep.
in photography, and your photography and the way you articulate your thoughts on, particularly when we were doing some um, compositions and things.
Yep.
Just you have sort of a real world insight into things, and are able to articulate that in a way that makes sense. Um, and all of the reviews that you're doing online are so helpful for getting people to make the best decision they can for whatever camera system and lenses. So I'm going to
Yeah,
try and
thank
tap
you.
into you on some of that today as well.
Sure, no problem.
But thanks so much, and let me check in here. I have Emilie. Emilie
Hey Rob, hi
Talpin.
Jimmy. I'm so excited to be with you
Hello.
guys this morning. Yay!
Hi, Emilie. So yeah, and Emilie is relatively new to Micro Four Thirds, I think, right? You just
I
started a few
am.
years ago under the mentorship of Lee Hoy, as a matter of fact.
That is
And
correct.
you're also an OM system ambassador, am I right?
I am. I've been very lucky. I don't know what happened. They just picked me, and no, I did a program with them, a break-free program, and they were still Olympus. Amazing. That was during the pandemic. I had a great time. I had Lehigh as my mentor, and I had all of you, because let's be honest, like I was like everybody in the chat asking my question, sending email to ambassadors, and yeah, it's been the OM system has been such a great family, and I'm really lucky to be where I am today and just having fun and
Yeah,
sharing love of photography. So thank you
absolutely.
for having me.
No, thank you, Emily, because I think really you bring so much creativity and fun to the Micro Four Thirds world and OM systems. The work that you've done with in your photography has just been uh, just epic, really, with the macro photography and the little water droplet things you used to do, or still do, I assume, and also in your wildlife. And I think you're expanding more into travel.
I am, yes. I'm doing
Yeah.
more traveling. And with the OM3, I actually might do more street and landscape.
Oh
So
my goodness.
I'm going to be in all your channel
Yeah.
for advice. And I feel like creativity, I feel like I'm so new that what you say creativity might just me, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm just having fun.
No, I think it's a natural ability or skill or talent that uh, some of us aren't born with, like me. I have to really work to try to be creative, but it just seems to come so naturally to you. And also, I think you bring up a good point about how versatile the Micro Four Thirds system is. It's not just sports, action, wildlife. It's for travel, macro,
Yes.
and as we'll get to astrophotography, it can do everything. It's the most flexible, versatile system, in my opinion, and I think that's why all of us here love this system so much. Um, so let me bring in Thomas. Oops. we lost his feed there. So we will go to Ben while Thomas straightens out his camera there. So Tom, if you can hear me, your camera went blank. So maybe
We
you can bring
fogged
that
out.
back online. But anyway, hey Ben, how are you? Good to see you.
Good.
Ben has been such an inspiration, and it's taught me so much in the field of astrophotography, and it's really expanded my photography beyond astrophotography, because a lot of the techniques and settings and everything that you would use in astrophotography can be applied in everyday photography. And I learned so much about the sensor and the lenses and the capabilities of the system and what it can really do and why it does it so well. And Ben is really good at, has a lot of content on his channel related to sort of the technology and the sensors and everything that helps you understand why the Micro Four Thirds is such a powerful system. So Ben, tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe something we don't know.
Well, I mean, everybody knows that I have cancer right now. I'm stage 4.
Yeah.
But, besides that fun rigmarole, I basically go out and I spend that time under the stars, sometimes in the frigid cold, like I was last night. And yeah, I have a lot of fun taking pictures of stars. And I've always been using Olympus just because, like, when I started at my journey in photography period, I was like, I wanted to do astrophotography. And I was actually kind of dead set on getting a Nikon FM2 because I thought it was a really pretty camera. And my photography dealer, he said, no, you want an OM1. You know, this is specifically an OM1N back in the film days, because it didn't need any batteries or anything like that for the shutter to stay open. And so that's how I started my journey in astrophotography. And I think photography was the most fun for me in film. I'm going to be honest. I've never quite 100% captured back that fun feeling that I had. Just something about, especially looking at slides. You know, when you get your pictures back from development 16 days later, and you get to look at your slides, and we'd always have slideshows in the basement with our projector and so forth. And there was just something family, wholesome, and community kind of like that. It's just, I don't know. I just have never been able to recapture that sort of feeling, so to speak. Call me a romanticist.
Yeah, I'm with you. I get very nostalgic myself with.
But this guy, kind of close.
Yeah, that definitely has those vibes.
It's the closest I've been, I think, to that feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so looks like Thomas has his camera back on, so we will bring you in, buddy. Let's see. Hey, Thomas, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Thanks.
Good.
Sorry for the hiccup. I just learned the hard way that you should never mess with camera settings during a live stream, you know, so better keep things like they are. But yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for taking time to be here, as with all of you. But Thomas, you know, you are such a valuable asset to the Micro Four Thirds community. You bring in not only the technical side of the cameras, but a little bit of the history, and you also point out so many things that get very easily overlooked. I was really impressed with how you notice the little things on cameras, like the buttons on the OM3, how each one has a little bit different click or pressure, and why is the AF on button kind of soft as opposed to having a click. Just little things that just are so easily overlooked, but are important. And in an indirect way is, I think, why the Micro Four Thirds system, but OM system in particular, it feels so good in the hands and has such a fluid workflow because it's really has that sort of that heritage, right, of cameras. It's not like, you know, some companies out there, they just started making cameras because they could, right? But yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, or maybe something people may not know about you. That'd be interesting.
Oh, well, something people don't know about me. Well, except that I'm having technical problems when entering your live stream. I think there is. What else is there to share? Well, first and foremost, thanks for the warm introduction, and it's really. And I think that's maybe really a thing that has to be pointed out, or is something about me that something photography related about me that I don't really talk about that often, and that is, I wouldn't really consider myself a camera collector, but I'm a camera lover. I love different cameras, and I agree that having a special relationship with a camera, having a certain attachment to a camera is important to me and my photography, my art, right? So I completely agree with what you said, Rob, that it is a refined user experience that at the end of the day makes us pick up a camera and go out there and take photographs. So yeah, so
Yeah.
for me, the emotional connection with a camera and with a lens is of course also very, very important, besides all the technical details that I
Exactly.
love so much.
I'm right there with you on that. Having that connection, or and I brought this up with my viewers once, where I asked them, does how the camera look matter? And yeah, maybe it's unique to the Micro Four Thirds, but uh, yeah, it does matter. It does matter how the camera looks, how it feels in your hand, and how it makes you feel when you're out shooting. And that's why I think the OM3 and the previous Pen F before that were such special cameras, and are special cameras for all of us. So, but yeah, thank you. Thanks for that, bringing that up. And I do want to try to get started. And for the audience, we're going to have an open Q&A at the end for those of the guests that can stay. So if you have any questions for any of our guests, try and hold them till the end. But I'm going to go through a few thoughts here, because there's such a variety of camera systems out there, and any of you can answer this, or many of you, all of you. But what kind of drew you to the Micro Four Thirds system to begin with, over say any other format or brand of camera? How about you, Jimmy? What do you say?
All right. Okay. Well, you said it literally just 5 minutes ago. Does the look matter, right? And you know what? For those people who not familiar with me or know my photography, I started everything with Canon. My dad did use Olympus SLR back in the days, but always a Canon guy. In 2012, I was traveling to Hong Kong, doing some documentary over there. And then when I exited the train station, I saw a big, gigantic poster right in front of me, and it was a gorgeous camera advert. So it was the original OMD EM5, and it was the look that captivated me straight away. It was the silver camera, silver and black version. And when I saw that advert, I just told myself, I've got to see this camera like with my own eyes and trying to touch it. So I went to the camera store and I saw it. Oh, this is a tiny camera. It's not as big as I thought. I thought it would be like a full-size DSLR, but it wasn't. It was, in 2012, mirrorless camera still like in its infancy, to be quite honest. And then so the a small camera like that really kind of surprised me in a way. But it was the look. It was the look that kind of caught my attention first. But after I tried the EM5, and then I realized that it's actually very different experience to start with. It's very different to DSLR, but also at the same time is quite capable, only because of the IBIS. Like we've never seen anything or experienced anything like this before. The IBIS really kind of got me into the Micro Four Thirds system, and because I thought, wow, with the stabilization and things like this, I could do a lot more than just simple walking around. Everything is so stabilized, and I could see myself using a wider lens. I could probably use it without tripods, which in many cases my travel photography does require tripods. So I thought, having an IBIS system like that potentially could change the game. So I think that I think two reasons there now. There's the look and also the IBIS system.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I think we almost take for granted now, that cameras are going to have some sort of image stabilization built into them.
Yes, yes.
But really, nobody does it better than OM Systems, in my opinion.
No, as you've probably seen that in the last 2 to 3 years, starting to expand my channel and including a lot of different brands. So I have experience now with multiple different brands now, and I've tried all the image stabilization system, whether it's going to be Nikon, Sony, Fuji, and all the others. That I could confidently say that OM system is still by far the best when it comes to stabilization. No one can touch it when it comes to that. Whether it's going to be for video or stills, it's just phenomenal. I mean, I could handheld quite easily, with let's say an 8mm lens on any of the latest generations of OM system cameras. I could easily handhold it for about like 3 to 4 seconds without fail.
Yeah.
This is actually quite amazing, and I can't do the same thing with any other cameras I just mentioned.
Yeah, and that's again what makes the Micro Four Thirds system so flexible and expand your photography right away with just the camera. You don't have to start. We can talk about ND filters and all of that, but yeah, there's so many things in the camera that make it so powerful and flexible just in the body alone before you start doing anything else.
Yes.
And it does it the best, and the execution of all of these features are seamless and very smooth.
Absolutely, and I think the intuitiveness of all the controls, the button layouts, it just makes the whole system very easy to use, even like as a beginner.
Yeah, and that's what impressed me, because I shot Nikon full frame, and I just bought an EM10 just because I wanted something small and light to take when I go hiking, and I fell in love with it because I was like, wow, this does so many things, and it does it well. And yeah, the rest is history. And I wanted to ask Thomas next kind of the same question, but he went offline.
No,
Oh no!
it's
back.
There he is.
I'm here.
There he is.
I'm
Okay,
I'm not evading your questions, Rob. I'm sticking with you.
Because you're relatively new, here at least in the creator world. I'm not that familiar with what really drew you to the system itself. I mean, it's clear that you love the system for all the things that it is and what it does, but what sort of attracted you in the beginning?
So here's the thing. It's the OMD EM5 Mark I, interestingly. So I also saw this camera back then. Well, actually, I saw the EM10, but I finally ended up getting the EM5. So it was also the overall design, right? But apart from that, what really caught my attention, so my very first camera was an Olympus OM2N, so an analog SLR. So I always, I had like this connection with this design language to a degree, and the OMD EM5 was just like a camera. I was like, that is really, it looks very attractive. And then you pick it up, and then you realize that it is really that good. And while I've been an Olympus user.
Oops, I lost your audio.
Nope, nothing.
Still got nothing. Okay. So Ben, I think, whoops. Oh, no audio. It's okay. Let me go to Ben for a second. And Ben, I we've gotten to know each other pretty well. We've met in person many times because you're only a couple hours away from me. But so I have a little idea about, you kind of started, and you mentioned it earlier about starting with the OM1 for astrophotography. So again, it seems like a natural progression just to go with the digital side of OM systems and Olympus. But you tell me, is that the case, or what is like something that one feature or something that you really appreciate the Micro Four Thirds system that has kept you there, transitioning from film to digital?
So what got me to transition from film to digital? It wasn't actually the mirrorless 4/3 system. It was the original 4/3 system,
Ah, that's
the
right.
the Olympus E1, which I had two, and I still have two. And I was a very early adopter. I think I remember the first E1, along with the battery grip, along with the flash, along with the lens, was like $4,400 for a 5 megapixel camera.
Wow.
Which, by the way, is about the resolution of our eyes, 5 megapixels.
Hmm.
And yeah, so that was my start into digital. And I think what got me to hop from 4/3 into the mirrorless system that we have now was the EM1 Mark I.
Mm-hmm.
I was very aware of the EM5 when it came out. In fact, like I was working as the full-time photographer for the college that I worked at the time. And I remember our art director, he came to me when the EM5 came out, and he was really interested. And he's like, do you want to switch from a Nikon to this camera? And I actually said no for the EM5 just because I didn't like the viewfinder, but I always know that like digital viewfinders were the way that I wanted things to go. And I knew that was the future. And when the EM1 Mark I came out, it had a better viewfinder. And so that's when I made the switch. And then, of course, I have two EM1 Mark Is. I still have them. And I've never worn the shutters out on them, but that's because I don't use the shutters that often.
Right.
I take a lot of pictures, without the shutter.
Right. With the astrophotography too, I think.
Oh, that I do use a shutter still, but we're not
Okay.
taking. I mean, you go out one night and you spend the whole night taking pictures, and you might use that shutter 100 times.
Right. Right.
It's not like when I go birding and I come back with 20 pictures,
Yeah, exactly.
because I'm using co-capture.
And I do want to get more into the astrophotography side with MFT a little bit later. But let me ask Emilie. I think with Emilie, I have a feeling that you're a little bit, you got kind of two sides to you. You're a very creative person, kind of naturally creative. And then on the other side, it's like you were also a teacher for a little while. And I think your approach, so you didn't like just see the EM5 Mark I and get into it, but what kind of steered you towards the Micro Four Thirds system? I have no idea, but
Yes, so it's funny. So I've been a teacher for 20 years, so a long time. You see, this is gray hair right here.
Oh,
It's happening. But it's funny because I started with a phone, and I'm like, my phone can take photos. Okay, that's great. And I did pretty well with my phone. So then I thought I really want to get a camera. I got in my local camera club, the Seacoast Camera Club, and I had the wrong camera with me. I bought the wrong camera because I didn't know what was best for me. And at my club, I had Pat, who is a friend of mine, and she said, you need to look at Olympus. This is a great camera for you because of the computational technology, what it can do for macro, what it can do for stars, even if, the night photography, I don't do much, but it's something that always interested me. So I went to the NECCC, so the New England Camera Club Conference, and Olympus at the time had a booth there, and Andy was there, and he said, here, try, that was the OMD M1 Mark II, I'm going to give it to you for a day, and you try it. I swear, as soon as I got it in my hand, it was over. Like, the ergonomy is so good. And then my problem with the camera that I had was it was too heavy. So I was always thinking, okay, I'm just going to get one lens. And then it was really limiting the way I was photographing. And it was not a good fit. I mean, it doesn't mean that because it's not a good fit for me, it's not a good fit for you. But for me, that was not working. And as soon as I got my first Olympus camera, my yeah, but I really improved drastically, and it went quite fast for me because I was happy. I had the right tool for me, and I could create whatever I wanted. And just that approach of, if I don't know something, I'm gonna learn about it and I'm gonna experiment, and some are gonna work and some are not gonna work. But that's part of it. It's just having fun, and it's a camera I have with me all the time. I go and get the mail, I have my camera. I go to my chiropractor, I have my camera. I go teaching, I have my camera. So that's just, yeah, it's, soccer is life, or football is life. From Ted Lasso, for me, it's photography is life. That's just, I love it. And having the right tool is key.
Yeah, and uh, it had nothing to do with how the camera looked. It's just how it felt when you had it in your hands, and the execution, or the how fluid using the camera was, so that you could,
Yes. Because
follow those creative ideas.
it's so funny, because every time, so I want to buy a car, I go to the car dealer, and the first thing that the car dealer is going to tell me, and I think that's because I'm a woman, is, oh, I have a car and you're going to love the color. And I'm like, I don't think the color is going to help me go from point A to point B.
Right.
Sure, do I want a good color? But that's secondary, So yes, the look of the camera is important, but it's something that comes second. I love the OM3. It's such a retro camera. I get compliment. I was at a restaurant 2 days ago, and the waitress stopped in a truck with food and said, "Oh my God, this is a beautiful camera." I kid you not. And it's cool. It's a great way to start a conversation and then share your passion for photography. But to me, the ergonomy, the computational technology, the fact that this camera it works. With my brain, it fits very well. So I'm
Yeah.
happy with it.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page with that.
Yeah.
And Jimmy, I think
Yep.
it's you and Thomas sort of got attracted to the M5 Mark I initially.
Yep.
And that's a little before my time, actually. And I haven't been shooting that long, maybe 10 years now, which sounds like a long time, but it's not. But I think having a diverse range of camera systems that you've used and own, what do you think that is really one feature that more photographers should know about Micro Four Thirds, or something about the OM system cameras that you think may get overlooked?
I think it's the in general sense, the computational side of it is because it's really hard to explain to people unless they actually try them. Because let's say the live bulb light composite, if I just mention to people, they would say, "What is that?" It's quite hard to actually explain and to actually see it happening on the screen. And I think that's why I always urge people, like, okay, you don't have to trust my words. You just go down to the camera store, pick it up, go out for a shoot around the corner, and try all these little features there, and see by yourself. This is really important to see it and experience it. And every time I go into camera show and I do talks and things like that, I always trying to show people exactly what I meant about all this computational stuff. It's quite easy to say it, because these days it seems that artificial intelligence, for instance, is an overused word now. It's like everywhere, and it's got AI recognition. Every camera has it. Oh, you got AI this and AI that, and it's a little bit overused now. And people always think about computation is part of the AI stuff. In a way, it is, but then it is a lot more than that. It's a lot more of a tool for photography to generate different type of photography, like the live NDs and live grade NDs. To me, is a very useful features for those people who may not necessarily be very experienced on using ND filters to start with. They never, if they just new to photography, they don't know anything about filters, and these will be a good gateway for them to experience what it's like. And if they really got into it eventually, they probably still better using a physical filters, because you can get a 10-stop filter, still does a better job than an ND 125, right? 128 on the computer in the camera. And so it's definitely this computation side has been completely overlooked or underrated. To me, I actually use a lot of those features for a lot of my photography. Live grade ND, the GND filters are really phenomenal. I use it all the time in my street photography. Also not street, but more like travel photography. So I use them a lot. Really good. The live composite, oh my god, that is really one of the best things ever. You know, I could do like light trail at nighttime. You know, it's just amazing. And these things, it takes out a lot of guesswork away. If those people are not really into like long exposures photography, and if you try to do something similar to what we're doing in the home system cameras, there are a lot of guessworks going. You know, you have to kind of figure out, you know, how long you need to expose it for, because you can't see the result until you actually press stop in the shutter button, and then you see the review is, oh, maybe a little bit overexposed. Now I have to do it again. You know, that's a bit too long. But live composite take that guesswork out of the way, because you could never ever overexpose a shot. So this is, you know, something that they need to try and see.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point about these computational features are kind of a gateway to expand your photography, because the computational thing, they're trying to really sort of imitate, or what's the word I'm looking for? Not imitate, but like you said, it's kind of a gateway to let's use ND filters, for example.
Yep, it's emulating the effect.
And the grad ND filter, and I'm really, I think that I hate to use this word, but the CP button on the OM3 is a game changer for me. And I want to
absolutely.
And I want to encourage everyone, because I'm going to do this right now, to share an image to maybe illustrate some of the features that we're going to, or some of the things about Micro Four Thirds we're going to talk about. But I'm going to see if I can share this one image, because this really illustrates what you were saying. God, I didn't practice sharing my own screen. Hold on. This one. This image here is a combination of a real ND filter and grad ND. So I use a graduated filter on the top half to bring the sky in, but then I used a 5-stop regular ND filter on the lens to get this long exposure. And this is something that you can't do with any other camera, because no other camera has this grad ND. And this is what I mean, what you were saying, by expanding, you know, your photography and experimenting. I think this is a really good example of how I did it, because I never had grad ND before the OM3, and I was like, man, this is amazing. Because if I just used the grad ND, I wouldn't be able to get the long exposure by itself. But you know, where can you get a grad ND that would do all this? You know what I mean? A graduated ND filter, you wouldn't be able to do a long exposure. But combining it, you know, this is an amazing application for that specific feature. So anyway, that's enough of that. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up. You're right. It's kind of a gateway to all the creative things that you can do with your photography. And this is where I wanted to kind of touch on with Ben, actually, is, you know, a lot of times I always hear how full frame is the way to go for astrophotography. And yet I think, you know, you chose and work with a lot of Micro Four Thirds cameras and dedicated astrophotography cameras. I think this is something that gets overlooked a lot. If you could explain a little bit why you think Micro Four Thirds is sort of ideal for astrophotography.
So first I'm going to share my screen here for a second.
Okay.
And I'm going to show a quick image. So this is a very simple picture. It's easy to take. And with an OM system camera, this is really easy to do. And by the way, this is where every single person in their journey into astrophotography should start. You should start just taking some star trails. You don't even need a tripod. You can just kind of like prop your camera up at the sky on like a rock or your deck or whatever. And I think the camera is live comp or live bulb here, but you turn on one of those features and it will get you this result. And doing this with other cameras is very difficult. You have to do it in post, basically assemble a whole bunch of pictures, or you have to use bulb mode, which if you have lots of light pollution, the sky will just get blown out beyond degree. And with the computational feature that's in OM system cameras and Olympus cameras, something like this is just insanely easy. So it's a great way to get started.
Yeah.
And also with the Starry Sky autofocus that we have, also within our cameras, we have a built-in intervalometer, which there are very few other cameras out there that have a built-in intervalometer. I think Canon has one, but you have to pay extra to download the firmware to do it. Now, unfortunately, it's limited to 60-second exposure with that internal intervalometer. But at least we have something, I wish they would expand it to 5 minutes, but that's something I've been asking for a while.
Yeah, that's for you, Ben.
Yeah.
Because Ben does really long exposures in astrophotography. Not just Ben, but any deep sky type astrophotography, you would spend a lot of time. And I think that's a great example of how flexible the system is, that people can do things like this. Because normally you would have to take hundreds of exposures and then stack them in whatever software to create that star trail. And that's fine. People have been doing that a long time, but now it's like anybody can do it. It's very simple, very straightforward. And that's something I wanted to maybe kind of pivot a little bit to Thomas and ask you, what do you think are sort of the unique advantages that Micro Four Thirds has to offer, in other types of photography outside of astrophotography? Oh, your audio.
Oh.
Yeah, you're totally out.
Well, here, Rob, can I add one more thing to my statement?
Go ahead.
So for a long time, and Tony Northrup is the one who started this thing, there's a lie that's been going out there, and that's that a smaller sensor gathers less light. That's not true. That's because you look at the exposure triangle, it doesn't include sensor size.
Right.
What you have to do in order to get more light with a larger sensor is you have to also have a larger aperture. And I'm not talking F ratio. I'm talking measurable size in the aperture of the lens. So like if you're using a telescope, it would be like going from a 100 millimeter aperture to a 200 millimeter aperture. And that's kind of one of the reasons why when I was like 4/3 guy, I was like, that doesn't intimidate me at all usually doing astrophotography, because the size of your sensor doesn't matter when it comes to how much light you actually gather. In order to change that, you have to have a bigger lens also.
Right. It's all about how much light are we getting per square millimeter or whatever that metric is. Not how many millimeters are we capturing, but how much are we capturing per millimeter. And I think another advantage that you told me earlier was about the smaller sensors run cooler.
They do. And I mean, there's a bunch of things. There's also like taking flats is one of the hardest parts of astrophotography calibration. And because of a slightly smaller sensor, you typically don't have the vignetting as bad with our sensors. And that just makes the calibration process a lot easier when you're doing your image stacking. So that's something else that kind of makes, I know I do Astro images all the time, and I take no calibration frames whatsoever. I just stack them. That's it. And I can do that with 4/3 sensor. With this camera behind me here, this is an APS-C sensor. I have to take flats of that guy. There's only a few telescopes that I have that I can get away with, but I pretty much have to take flats with it, because that larger sensor, you start seeing the imperfections on the outside corners and also the vignetting.
Yeah. And there's a great Facebook group for astrophotography for Olympus users and OM system users. And there's a guy there that does all of his astrophotography like on a Pen F.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine.
Is Kyle or I forget his name. Anyway,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. I'm sorry, I forgot.
He's in Canada.
But yeah, I see these images taken with Micro Four Third cameras, and I constantly hear people saying, "Yeah, you got to have full frame for the best astrophotography, the least amount of noise," and it's the opposite is true. A lot of astrophotography cameras that I've seen even use little 1/2.3 inch sensors, because of all of the reasons that we would want to use the Micro Four Thirds sensor. But anyhow, I think let me ask Jimmy real quick, and I'll come back to you, Thomas. Yeah, because there's still no audio when you're talking.
You might have to jump out and jump back in.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything. We'll come back, but let me ask you, Jimmy.
Okay. Yep.
What do you think is sort of the one misconception? Like I just talked about how full frame, people always say full frame is best for astrophotography. That's a misconception. What's one misconception about Micro Four Thirds that you hear a lot that you would disagree with?
I think it's all relating to light. I think most of the case, and Ben said the same thing as well. It applies because light applies to any sort of photography. Without light, we don't have photography. So people always think in a smaller sensor, just basically capture less light. And then also I think another big thing is about aperture, right? Aperture sizes, and they always say, oh, you got a 1.2 lens. It's not 1.2; it's only like 2.4. But like aperture is an aperture. It's calculated in a way that is whatever light amount of light being going through the lens barrel to the sensor. It's not about the equivalent depth of field effect, let's put it that way.
Right.
And people just always say that oh, you got crop sensor, whether it's Micro Four Third or APS-C, you're not having the true 2.8 or 1.2 or 1.4 lens. Is always going to be smaller, but it is smaller. If you look at the metrics, you look at a side by side comparison. If you shoot at 1.2, let's say you have a base ISO 200, whatever, you have the same shutter speed. So like it's not different to anything else. People always say, no, you're not. They keep arguing this point here, but I think to this point now, we've been using Micro Four Third for the best part of the last 15 years. We hear this almost every day, and now to the point that I just sort of given up explaining to people.
Yeah, and really, my counter usually is, what difference does it make? What difference does it make that even if that were true, even if it were true, what difference does it make? You still need to get an exposure, and you use the settings to get the exposure that you want. So I don't know it. Yeah. So I try not to bring it up. I try not to talk about things that seem controversial for some reason. It's like, it's okay if you believe that, that's fine.
Yeah.
I believe it the way I believe. But in the end, what difference does it make if I have to use a 4-second exposure and you use a 2-second exposure, to get the same ultimate, luminance in your image? What difference, But anyhow, but yeah, yeah, you can tell in my voice, I'm very frustrated with that particular subject as well.
Yeah.
And, Emilie, this is something I wanted to ask you actually, because you do some wildlife photography. Another thing that comes up a lot is about the 2x crop factor.
Yes.
What? Tell me about that and your thoughts on the 2x crop factor.
I mean, for me, it's an advantage, right? Because I see a lot of people, even with macro. I was doing a macro workshop yesterday with my camera club, and I was looking at all the different cameras, and they were like, well, I don't get what you have. And actually, yeah, let me show you this. We were doing some refraction, and I'm like, well, yeah, I have a Macro Four Third camera, so I can get really close, you will have to crop, so you don't have that advantage. And also another thing that, to me, going back to the computational technology, the focus stacking, it's a game changer. I mean, I do a lot of refraction. So I have a flower, and then the flower refracts in the water drops here. Let me put it actually in a big screen. So here, it is such an advantage. This shot I would not be able to get without focus stacking. I could do it, and then I will have to go to my computer, put all the images together, and hope for the best. I don't have to do that. This image is focus stack in camera, so that's another image. Focus stack in camera, and basically my camera can take up to 15 images, RAW and JPEG, and give me a JPEG of the end results. To be able to get a creamy background, but still have everything sharp in the front, and have my bubble sharp, and have my refraction sharp, I need to focus stack. And I just don't want to have to take all those images, go to my computer, stack them together, and decide, oh yeah, that's not correct. Like, I can see exactly if my shot is right or wrong, and readjust in the field. To me, it's huge. And I think there is also a misconception about you have to shoot everything raw. So we talked about sensor size. We should also talk about RAW versus JPEG. I have a JPEG image that was published in a science magazine for kids in France. That was a JPEG. They were very happy with it. You can do so much with JPEG, especially the JPEG, like on the OM3. It's excellent. And also megapixel. So that's kind of my other like beef. Like, I feel it's all about being, let me stop actually sharing this. It's all about, I feel like, being commercial, right? Hey, this camera has so many megapixels, so obviously you're going to pay a big price tag. Why do you need to have that many megapixels? What is it going to bring to your photography? Nobody's going to come and say, whoa, this is a great image. Is that a 80 megapixel image? Nobody. It's ridiculous. And I feel like it's brainwashing. That's what they're doing to us, is brainwashing us with those megapixel, with those sensor size. And at the end, this is a great image because it tells a story, because you capture the light correctly. There are so many things. Your composition is brilliant. There are so many other things, but nobody's ever going to tell you megapixel, sensor size, and that makes a great image.
Yeah, and I love how you kind of come back to, really it's about capturing the image and having fun and expanding your photography, and it's really had nothing to do with the gear. You know, people get tied up into it, and you know, having more resolution, like these high resolution cameras, it's more of an academic exercise than it really is making any difference in the final image that you're going to share. And shooting JPEG is perfectly fine when you're within that, you know, within that window, and you don't, if you get the, because there's a lot of scenes in photography that don't require super high dynamic range. You know, most of the time, you know, we're fine with the exposure is pretty even across the board. And it's only really when you try to push your exposures to certain extremes, okay, all right, so shoot raw, you know. But most of the time, you know, we can get by with JPEG. And I do want to come back to you about the OM3's JPEG engine a lot. We'll get into the OM3 with all of you guys here shortly. But I'm going to see if Thomas
I'm gonna
has
give
your
it another
audio.
Try. Yes.
Yeah, that looks good.
I can't believe it. Gods of the internet want me to talk finally. That's good. Sorry about that.
No worries. You know, again, we were talking about the sort of the misconceptions and things like that. But you know, I was just talking about dynamic range with Emilie. How do you handle like sort of very high dynamic range scenes? You don't want to get a silhouette, but you want to try to incorporate the entire scene and all of the elements of the scene. But sometimes things are too bright, sometimes things are too dark. what's your sort of approach to working with this kind of scene?
Well, let me start a bit technical first. And I'd say it is always important to keep in mind that regardless of how many stops of dynamic range that you have with your camera, you really don't want the scene to show more than 8 to 9 stops of well-defined dynamic range. Because if you do show more in an 8-bit output or on our regular screens, you're going to get this HDR look, because what you're doing is you're taking a lot of dynamic range and pushing it into a, let's say, well, a narrow reproduction container. Let's put it like that. And so that is kind of the thing that sometimes that also applies to me. I have these unrealistic expectations that I'm like, oh, I want to shoot a backlit scene and I want to see the clouds and everything, and I want to see everything on the face, and I want to see everything in the shadows. But when you tweak an image like that, it actually, even if the dynamic range is there in the raw file, right, doesn't really look that good, because it just gives us this HDR-y look, or it looks very, very flat. So that is kind of my primer to that. But of course, we do want to capture as much dynamic range as possible in most situations, and shooting backlit subjects, that's of course an issue. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to strategically expose, right? So for example, if there is like a cloud in the background, a cloud can be white, right? So I can push that all the way up to 255 in the JPEG. So that's okay, because it's gonna be white anyway. And then if you place the exposure like that, you find out that in 99% of all situations, you've got nice definition on the subject itself. And here's the cool thing: our eyes or our brains work, I'd say, in a very special way, that you actually don't need a mid-tone exposure in the face, right? So you can go like 3 stops under and you're still gonna see all the nuances. So let's say 4 stops over, that's where the cameras start clipping, and 3 stops under, then you've got 7 stops, and yeah. So there is still 5 stops left with a camera like the OM3. So usually if you get the exposure right, to answer your question, then I'd say you are pretty much set. And every time it turns out that you blew the highlights too much or anything like that, then it's probably on you and not really the scene, I'd say.
Right.
So really get the exposure right. Don't try to push everything in post, because then it's usually
Yeah.
too late. Is that?
Yeah, and that's what I've told people in the past is, when you have a very high dynamic range scene,
Yeah.
and let's say bracketing is not really an option, because it's not a still life. You have to do it in a single shot. You have to pick one sometimes, shadows or highlights. And like you said, if the
Absolutely.
clouds can be white, then you pick your shadows for your exposure.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you one other technical question, if this makes any sense, is we have highlight and shadow, blinkies. I don't know what else to call it, in our cameras to help us manage some of that exposure. But we also have now we have zebra as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can use that in the photo mode or not, but I think you can.
Well,
But anyhow,
yeah. Oh, sorry.
if you could elaborate a little bit about kind of the difference between maybe zebra patterns and highlight shadow clipping, or just talk about highlight shadow clipping to help us with our exposure.
Yeah, so that's actually very interesting, because to a degree it's the same thing, and then to another degree it's not, because the zebra thing is using the IRE scale, right? So that's the thing that we see in professional movie productions a lot. So it usually goes from 0 to 109, and it's actually, to be very technical, it is actually calibrated for the output, but in general you can just think of it as a brightness level. And it is actually just a different way of looking at the data. So it is not really that different than the than the blinkies, like the highlight and shadow warning that you mentioned, Rob. It's really pretty much the same thing in terms of practical use, but it just uses a different let's say luminosity calculation. So
Okay.
so that is so you can basically translate that pretty easily by just saying, okay, 109 is like clipping, full clipping, like 255 for most movie picture profiles. So some movie picture profiles behave a little bit differently, but I've got a video upcoming on that. And the highlight clipping thing really is, well, it's just if all 3 channels amount to the set value, then you get the warning. And actually, coincidentally, I'm going to show you, I knew that yesterday from a street photo walk. I've got this street shot. I'm not going to try anything funny with screen share, because then things going to crash. And when you look at this photo, you're going to see that that there are clouds in the background. And actually, would I turn on highlight and shadow warning, the clouds would be white and blinking, but there is enough definition there. So this is really also the same thing for video, right? If you've got something white, you can push it to IRE level of 109 or Zebra level of 109. So yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay, that makes sense. So the same thing, just on different scales, basically.
Yeah. Thank you. That's the way. That's the way to put it.
Okay, that makes sense, because it's always kind of confused me. The why would I use zebras, or is that better than using highlight? Anyway, now I understand. They're just same thing, just on a different scale. And Jimmy, that really I wanted to ask you, Jimmy, about what do you think is sort of a feature that's maybe, I think we've already talked about this, but I just talked about the highlight shadow and zebra patterns. What's another feature you think might be overlooked or underrated on the Micro Four Thirds or OM system cameras? Because you mentioned IBIS. Oops, your audio's off. Sorry. Nope, nothing. I'm not hearing anything.
It's a curse. One by one, we're going down with our audio.
I know. It's okay. I'll come back to you, Jimmy. Let me ask you, Ben. I guess we were talking about astrophotography and how you use that a lot, but I guess how would you say the MFT sensors compare to, say, like the camera, because like I said, somebody was using a Pen F, right, for astrophotography, but how does like using a regular camera versus, say, a dedicated astrophotography camera that might use the same sensor as the Pen F?
So I've got here a Pen F, and I also have here, this is a Taupe Tech. Actually, it says Orion on the side, but it's a Taupe Tech camera. These two cameras have the same sensor. Exact same sensor. Okay. The only difference is that this guy here is cool. It's got a big refrigerator in the back of it. And this thing can drop the temperature of the sensor by up to 45 degrees Celsius, which is an enormous amount.
Wow.
This guy here, the Pen F, usually when it's running, like even on the coldest of nights, typically the sensor gets down to maybe about 10 degrees Celsius at the coldest. Whereas this guy here, I'm typically running it at -20. And so what that does is, for long exposures, there's a huge difference in the amount of thermal noise it's picked up, because silica, when it reacts to light the same way it reacts to heat. And so if an exposure is long, the longer that exposure is, that heat builds up signal in the pixel more and more and more as the exposure gets longer. And so you basically get noise that starts to overcome the image. And by having a cooler, okay, in the camera, that greatly reduces it. In fact,
Okay.
And I've had a lot of guys ask me like, okay, I want to do just Astro. What camera should I get? A lot of times I tell guys to just get a dedicated camera, because the difference is enormous. And I got pictures later on. I'll show I'll show the difference and everything. But yeah, these dedicated cameras, just because they have a cooler on them, makes them so much better for astrophotography.
Yeah.
It's all because of that heat thing. You know, I would love to see like an OM1X that has a built-in cooler in it.
So
even when I had a heat sink mechanism and tube that would kind of distribute heat, but that's like a passive type of heat management system. And you know, but yeah, so these guys here, with the dedicated coolers in them, it is an enormous difference in noise. And I actually, last fall, I started working on a video showing the difference between the two of these, but I've been sidetracked because of cancer and everything.
Right. Yeah, just a little bit. I'm really impressed with your progress on all those fronts, and that you continue to contribute and give to the community. It's really very appreciated and impressive.
Thanks. Lately, I've been on a new medication, and it seems to be working really good.
Good.
So maybe I will be better in a year. I'll be in recession or regression, or whatever they call that.
Whatever. You know, you're here with us today. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
And you know, Jimmy, if you can get a couple of photos ready, because
Sure.
we haven't seen anything from you.
Can you guys hear me anyway?
Yes, we can hear you now.
You know what happened? I think the problem is the muting. I tried to mute myself earlier when you guys were having conversation. When I tried to unmute it, I think it stayed at mute. So I have to rejoin to restart the. So I'm not muting myself now.
Okay. You're probably using a Mac though, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
No, I'm just
but
kidding.
but I'm using Chrome. I'm using Chrome, so it should be okay. And yeah, so let me just go to some sharing my window if I can. Okay, there we go. Yep. Can you guys see this?
Yep.
There we go. Okay. Awesome. I don't know if I can actually go full screen though. I'm not entirely sure. Oh, I can do full screen. There you go. Let me see if I can do full screen.
Yeah.
There we go. Is it better?
Yep. Awesome.
Okay. Right. And so now what I'm doing now. Sorry. Just trying to get back to my screen. Yep. So here are some sample images that I took when I was in Japan just last month when I was super ill. So I still managed to take some shots just simply by walking around my hotel area. And so something that I want to echo what Thomas was saying earlier about the dynamic range and lights and shadow. And to be quite honest, back in the early days of photography, when it comes to film chemicals, and it was even more limited than we have today. The film sensitivity is very slow in general, so in terms of freezing the moment is very, very difficult for them. So I just want to highlight the fact that we just have to just basically play with the lights a little bit and understanding how it reacts to the sensor of your own camera, because every camera is slightly different by default, whichever system you're using. And for me, I just very familiar with the Micro Four Thirds systems to start with, so I know how it reacts to a lot of situations when it comes to high contrast scenes like this. And for me, I love to play with shadows a lot. So in a bright sunny day like this, I simply just wanted to capture textures and also trying to play the extremes of the super white and the super black. So this is kind of the things that I'm going for when I was in Japan, because it's super sunny. So I thought might as well best use of some of the black and white photography that I do. And everything you see in this series of photographs were all done in the camera with the OM3, and everything that you see now, including this little grain that you may be able to see in the screen at the moment, are all created using the creative dial. Because within the creative dial in monochrome mode, you can set the grain level, so you can kind of mimic what the old kind of black and white film looks like. So I think to me, that's another kind of cool things to have when it comes to playing around with effects. I know this may not be everybody's cup of tea, but for me, when it comes to black and white photography, I always think that modern day digital black and white are just too clinical, just a little bit too clean for my taste. So even when I shoot with dedicated monochrome cameras, the likes of Leica, for instance, and I always artificially add some grains in the post-production just to give me a little bit more textures back, because this is how I used to see black and white photography. I know you can get some very fine black and white film, but you still see a little bit of it. So to me, it's always going to be there. So that's why I always love to see a little bit of grain effects when it comes to black and white photography. And maybe another shot. There's another very high contrast look, but again, I just love this sort of photography even when I was shooting around in London, especially in bright sunny summer days, because we do have a very long daylight in London. So it starts about 5 o'clock. So if you head around 6:30 in central London, you can capture something very similar to this. This is actually not that late as well. This is quite early. I think I got about 7 o'clock. This is about 7:30 or so, and in Tokyo. So it's quite an empty scene, but every so often you see people crossing, and I think that there's something that I kind of enjoy capturing them, a little bit of life in photography. Let's just get you another one. That's another shot similarly, and again, I play with the highlight and shadow, and this particular time, you see the clouds. The cloud is very evenly exposed in the far distance there, and I don't mind the blacks, and because a lot of people may think that, oh, I need to push the shadow up so you can see more detail, but in this particular case, I actually want it to be more black, more darker in the shadow areas to highlight that kind of lightning bolt shapes on the in the actual image itself, all created by the high rises on the right. So it creates a bit more kind of shapes in the photos.
Yeah, and this is a great example of the earlier conversation about working with high dynamic range scenes.
Yep,
you can still get really amazing epic images by embracing the dynamic range and crushing the blacks or pushing, clipping the highlight. It doesn't matter. It's all about creating that image.
No, exactly. And I think a lot of people like, especially, I mean, I'll sound a bit bad, but a lot of the slightly more inexperienced photographers, they always think that, I need to have a more balanced exposure photography or image, because that's how they see things on a lot of the smartphone, for instance, because smartphone these days, they have smart HDR. So they always, have everything in the photo. You never kind of have anything blown out or crushed in the image, so you see everything. So they're kind of very used to that HDR look. But if you do that in a camera, I mean, like what Thomas say, everything's starting to look a little bit fake, and it just doesn't look real to me. And I think they just have to understand the art of photography, and also and starting to understand the capabilities and limitations of the cameras, and how people used to use the lights and shadow to actually create an image. Because in the old days, we do dodge and burns a lot during developments, and that's how you create images like this as well.
Yeah, those images are stunning, really stunning.
And here's a color shot. So so this is utilizing the IBIS together with the live ND. So this is obviously shot during daytime and in a station. So I use the live ND to extend the exposure time further than just a couple of seconds. So I was hand holding it for about maybe 4 seconds. So luckily that she stayed quite still. So
Wow.
I managed to actually capture the shot with the train going past. So this is actually pretty cool. The train wasn't actually moving that quick, and that's why I had to use a live ND to boost it. So but it shows that what you can do with the computational side of the OM system camera together with that strong IBIS that we've been talking about.
Yeah, that's a great shot and great example of using the computational feature handheld.
Absolutely. And this is another example, just very simple street shot in Tokyo again. Emilie talked about the two. You mentioned about the 2-time crop factor, and Emilie talked about focus stacking, and I want to further on that by saying that in a lot of my photography, I'm not saying it's for everybody, but in my photography, shallow depth of field is actually the last thing I want.
Yeah.
I still want a little bit of subject separation, so don't get me wrong. I let a little bit of pop every so often when I do portrait work. But when I do travel and documentary stuff, I actually want as much depth of field as possible. So I want to see everything in a photograph. I want to use people. I want to use everything to compose the photograph to tell a story. So, this is something that I think where Micro Four Thirds or any sort of crop sensor camera, it has a much higher advantage over larger format cameras like full frame or medium format. Because for those cameras, you really have to stop down to f8, f11 to get something similar to I'm taking right here. And this is the f4, and it's just really something that people may not understand unless they're actually having the camera and starting to do the same thing of what I'm doing, if they're into this sort of photography, and they realize that, oh, wow, this is something a little bit more tricky for me because I have to stop all the way down to f16 or f11, and then you start to have diffractions going, and then you may not actually get the highest quality images that you may want or you were anticipating. So having Micro Four Thirds, you're doing f4, f5.6, which is the optimal aperture anyway for any sort of lenses. So you're actually getting much better quality photos in general.
Yeah. And, I think you're really highlighting what photography is about. It's about looking at all of the elements in the scene and organizing them, or not organizing them, but, composing them in a way that they come together to create sort of this pleasing scene or provide more information. Because too often, there's a lot of great photographers out there, and I'm not saying that you don't need shallow depth of field. There's times you need it, right? You do want to get rid of the distracting elements in the background, and you do that. One way to do it is through shallow depth of field, but
Yep.
those situations are different. Most of the time, most of us are like in scenes like you're showing here, where you see this beautiful. In this case, this is sort of a nice juxtaposition of this bridge against the seascape with the rainbow. There's so many elements in here that you want that deep depth of field. And it's frustrating to watch everyone talk about shallow depth of field when that is really something you only use, I would think, in an emergency where, you don't want the background elements.
Absolutely.
But yeah, tell me a little bit about this image.
I think you got that right there. I think that a lot of the misconceptions or people who tend to use larger aperture settings when it comes to photography is it because I think they felt almost like obliged because they spent so much money in getting a very expensive lens, because a lot of the 1.2, 1.4, f1, these large aperture lenses are usually more expensive, more in the high-end lenses. And so when they spend that sort of money, they thought, okay, I've got to make use of these aperture settings, trying to stick everything with the same with that aperture setting just to showcase what this lens can achieve. But in photography, it isn't just about that, and I think that the large aperture setting is giving you the flexibility for slightly more challenging lighting conditions. For instance, it's not necessary that it means that you need to shoot 1.2 all the time. To be quite honest, like I said already, f4, f5.6, f6.3, these are most likely the optimal aperture for the sharpest image you can create, edge to edge. So to me, if it depending on what type of photography you're doing, like this one particular, I shot at f6.3. So it's something that if you want to have the sharpest image you can get, and I tend to just use that sort of setting. So to go back to this particular image there, I did use another computational feature, is the live GND. So I did use a slightly more, medium setting. I can't remember, ND4 or ND8, I can't remember now. And so one of those, so to darken the sky a little bit, even though that there weren't much cloud texture in this particular case, but I can darken the sky enough to see the rainbow. Otherwise, the rainbow will be quite faint. You probably can't see it.
Wow.
So this live GND is, to me, it's a lifesaver. I don't have to carry a separate filter system in this particular case, and it just works great.
Yeah, that's wow. Yeah, that's a great image. And I want to kind of segue to um, a little bit about the lenses that you're using, because I see everything there is wide angle, like 12
Yep.
millimeter, maybe wider. And as far as lenses go, though, do you feel like there's maybe an underrated lens in the Micro Four Thirds lineup that you could recommend? Whether wide angle, telephoto, what do you think about lenses in general with the Micro Four Thirds system? What would you recommend?
I mean, it's quite a hard question, really. It's just depending on the type. First of all, very important is the type of photography you're into. Let's say when I do my day-to-day portrait work, and I tend to use a classic 25 or the 45, which is got like full frame would be 50 or 85 kind of range.
Mhm.
That's kind of my most used lens or most used focal length. I do occasionally use a slightly wider scenes if they good groups and things like that. But when I come to travel and street photography, I do use a lot of wide angle, and because I think that wide angle gives a lot of more, just a bit more impactful images, and it's all because of the distortion that you can get from a wider angle that you can't do with a tighter lens, for instance. So. A lot of the images that you see in my Japan series is actually all taken with the 17 millimeters 1.8.
Mm,
Occasionally, the one that you just saw, you go back to this one. This one I did use the 8 to 25 f4 Pro.
okay.
So I do use ultra wide if needed, so I can just basically distort the image enough to create something slightly more interesting. So this shot in particular, if you use a much tighter lens, it's not just about the change of field of view or the angle of view, but also you change the perspective when it comes to the roads, the lanes, and in the bridges. It just looked very, very different. When you use a wide angle, everything seems to stretch a little bit more. It just creating a little bit more, interesting visual.
Absolutely.
And just a quick one. That's another one. This is a 17 again, 17 1.8. This is actually a live com photo.
Mm,
Like I said, the live com is really amazing. It's just very
yeah.
easy to use features, and you could never overexpose your shot, because once you take in the sample exposure, and it will stay with that, and anything brighter than it will be recorded, but it will never kind of go over it. So it's just a cool things to have. And
Yeah.
I love, taking this type of golden hour shots with light composite. You can still capture the sky. If it's a sunny day, you can still see the blue, a little bit of a sunset colors there, and also the light trail at the bottom. So it just really, really a fun
Yeah.
thing to do.
And I love how the clouds look like brush strokes because they're moving as well.
Yeah, this is actually like a very unique visual that if you shoot live com, and if you taking a lot of shots with live com, you probably notice that a lot of the moving clouds are like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Doing things like this again is it right in the camera, you know?
Yeah, everything's in camera. Like I said, everything you see here is actually JPEGs from the OM3. So I did have the RAW just for emergency, and also for further processing if I want to exhibit one or two of these images in the future. But everything you see here is actually straight from camera on the JPEG. This is another shot that I liked a lot. I've kind of exposed to the shop. I deliberately underexposed, obviously, the subject. So again, we're talking about high contrast scenarios. So some people might think that, oh, I should brighten up the man in the foreground, just a bit more so you can see his faces and things like that. But I actually don't want to, and so I'd rather him be black, to be quite honest. And it just created a sort of like a mystery moments in the photograph, and they have that human shapes, and then the shop in the background there. And it's good. You do see people in the shop, so it's kind of like a good contrast between live and also in the lighting itself.
Yeah, and this, well, I think this image also builds on uh, something I talked about with Peter in the last stream about the viewer looking at this image and building their own story of
Yes.
what's going on.
Absolutely. I mean, because a little bit of mystery in photographs is always good, and it leaves people some imaginations. They can just imagine how they feel about the image, and also put themselves into that spot and think about everything as happening around there. I mean, if you show everything, it just it's just simply exposing too much, and in that way, I just think that leaves no room for imaginations. And the last thing I want is to basically show everybody everything. I just want people to think about the image most of the time. So I want to keep a little bit of secret in every image.
Mhm.
So this is
Awesome.
another high contrast look, and this is just a quick shot of the crossing and with the business of Tokyo. That I just want to see, the live people there, and also more particularly, what caught my eye is the two persons in the middle here, one in the red, one in the white, which is quite contrasty to all the other people who wearing black coats.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is an illustration of of a skilled photographer being able to very quickly see in that moment and capture it what it is that is unique or interesting about a scene, especially a very fast-paced moving scene like this.
Yeah, and once again, you showcase that you can actually do a lot with Micro Four Third. People always say, "Oh, it's a little bit a lesser system to compare to others," but as you can see from all the images I show you, you can achieve a lot with a simple OM3.
Absolutely. And I wanted to go to Thomas again real quick, because we talked about in last year a little bit
Yes.
about the difference in lenses between larger formats and Micro Four Thirds, and how ultimately Micro Four Third lenses are going to be smaller because of the sensor. But there's always this argument about, well, full frame lenses are getting smaller, the bodies are getting smaller, et cetera, et cetera. And you said something about that may be true, but if you make a full frame lens with the same field of view as a Micro Four Third lens, so say a 50 millimeter full frame lens versus a 25 millimeter uh, Micro Four Thirds, and they make them roughly about the same size. Aside from the lens mount, it's going to be wider, but they make them basically the same size and weight. Your argument at the time was there's going to be some compromise, and I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate a little bit and make that point, because there's an inverse relationship between the size of a lens and the image quality. That's
Yeah.
just the way it is.
Yeah.
Assuming we have
I
audio.
agree. I agree. Do we have audio?
Okay, yeah, we're good.
Yes. Okay. No, yeah. No, Rob, I completely agree. I completely agree about this inverse relationship, and you can also, if you stick to the Micro Four Thirds system itself and do some comparisons. For example, one of the most frequently asked questions is, should I get the 25 millimeter f1.8 version 2 or the 25 millimeter f1.2? And so the Pro lens. And well, of course, at first glance, both lenses look pretty much the same. But when you look at sharpness across the frame, when you look at vignetting, also digitally corrected vignetting, because you're not going to see it in the JPEG, then you see the compromises. And it is really up to you to decide whether you need top-notch image quality and go for an f1.2 Pro lens, or just say, okay, it's all right, I prefer having a compact lens like the 25 millimeter f1.8. And it's exactly the same thing as you highlighted, Rob, with so-called full frames of 35 millimeter sensor cameras. If you want superior image quality, you have to bring a lens like this. There is no way around it. If you have a small zoom, the manufacturer is going to hide all sorts of things. They're going to do a post vignetting brightening, so they're going to remove the vignette just by brightening the image. Even in the raw data, you can see that sometimes. Depends on the manufacturer, right? They're going to apply more sharpening. So all sorts of tricks to kind of hide it. I'm not against that, but it is very important to state, as always in life, right? There is no
Yeah,
such thing as free lunch.
right.
That is
And
just free for all.
like correcting chromatic aberration, the vignetting, as you
Oh yeah.
pointed out. A lot of these things are done digitally in camera these days,
Yeah.
and hence they can make lenses smaller because of the technology that they can put into the digital sensor, right?
But there is one thing, Rob, and I think that's very interesting. Even though you can correct these things, you can definitely measure the differences in the lab. And especially if you do if you're really working on some very high production value stuff or some very demanding genres like astrophotography or certain high magnification landscape photography, then you're gonna see all these little errors if you put the images side by side from a well-corrected, apochromatically corrected lens, for example, and like a small compact compromise lens, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I completely agree, and it's so never ever think that you can get smaller, better, less expensive, and whatever. So it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, we're not there yet, despite what they try to tell us.
Yes, it's all
You
marketing,
know,
right? All marketing.
yeah, exactly. Because so yeah, we have the smaller lenses, but they're not. There's not as much compromise in our lenses,
Oh
generally
yes,
speaking.
that is
With
very true.
the other larger format cameras that have similar sized lenses with the same field of view, but yeah, there's a lot of compromise there. And any I think art reproduction is a big area that you don't want to have a lens with compromises.
Oh, may I just add one thing there, Rob?
Hmm.
Because I think you touched on the very important aspect. Of course, by increasing camera size, you can increase image quality. But the problem is that you are very so when you go down this path, you will very quickly reach the point where you cannot see more image quality. You cannot see it, even if it's there, because there is like a certain break-even point where it doesn't really make any sense. And that's like Emilie said, why do you need eight? There is no need for 80 megapixel. It is a fact. You can have it, you can play around with it, but you can sell cameras with it, right? But you absolutely do not need it, and you can prove that because of what printers can do, of what screens can do, of how close you want to get to an image, how you work in the field. So there are so many factors. You don't need that, but you can sell it. That's one point, and that is really, I think, one special thing about Micro Four Thirds, that you get more than enough image quality than you're ever gonna need, and you're not gonna get all the excess image quality that you're never gonna need. So you have enough for very zealous cropping. You can crop in very tightly and still get excellent quality. You can do all these things. You can shoot wide open, you can stop down. You get really what you need as a photographer, but you don't get all the stuff that you won't need anyway. So
Yeah, yeah. And what do you do to sort of maximize that detail and sharpness in a lens? Uh, and this would apply really to any system, but
yeah.
what are some techniques that you do?
Well, I really so that is something that I try to bring to my channel in new lens reviews. I'm really trying to so I'm testing these lenses like really every detailed aspect of them, and I'm so because there are really by knowing what your lens actually does, and this is not just about resolution but also chromatic aberrations and all these things. You can find certain aperture settings that will give you exactly maximum sharpness, maximum resolving power, or maximum contrast or a bit lower contrast. You can really learn a lot by just, you know, using the lens and finding out, but you can learn even more by bringing the lens to the lab and really testing it in a scientific way. And I think, and this is really something that I'm exploring, especially this year. I'm trying to find out where all these sweet spots are in these lenses, because when I did that and tried it in practice, I was just stunned by how much detail and how much sharper images I could get by just knowing the characteristics of the lens. So this is really
Yeah,
my top tip. Learn how to use the stuff, even if you're using a very inexpensive lens like a 14 to 42, right? Just find out the sweet spots, work with it under all circumstances, and you're gonna find out, oh, this is where it's the sharpest in the center, this is where it's sharpest across the frame. So you can really, so this is really my tip, besides all the other things that are obvious, right? Like hold your camera steady and try to
Yeah.
set a fast enough shutter speed. Yeah, but this is really something you can. It's not just for the sake of testing. I think that's very often overlooked, and people don't really know their equipment and jump to conclusions.
And wow, I look forward to that.
Thank
What
you.
you're going to be
Thank you so
bringing
much.
to the community with telling us the sweet spots for each lens in each situation, because a lens might be very sharp at a certain aperture, but then only in the center, right? But if you want to
Absolutely.
sort of balance that to the edges, what's a different aperture we might use, or what's a different focal length we might use to achieve, what we want. Because I noticed, I just love kit lenses. And yesterday, actually, I was shooting with the body cap lens.
Very cool.
You know, this makes it, pocketable. Well, really any pancake lens, this would be very pocketable. And I posted some images on my Flickr, or not Flickr, but on Instagram, if you guys want to see what you can do with just this by using it for the kind of scenes and compositions that work well with this kind of lens, especially art filters work really well with this lens. And Emilie, I wanted to come to you because I wanted to see more of your photography, and maybe you can share with us a little bit about the images and what how you captured them, and talk about some of maybe the special features that you had, uh,
I can
the
definitely.
computational features or the creative dial, all these things that we now have in the OM3 and also the PenF and EP7, but these are sort of OM system unique. Uh, Boy, I
That's
forgot the
true.
English language again. But anyway, you go. I'll stop talking.
No, 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 that's fine. Thanks, Rob. So let me share that, and we're gonna make it a little bit bigger. So yeah, I've been actually shooting with the OM3 for over 2 months now, and it's funny because when they send it to me, I'm like, wow, I'm really a wildlife photographer, and there is one thing I'm not, is a landscape photographer or a street photographer. I'm not a street photographer. I am not a landscape photographer. But man, I've been having so much fun with the OM3. And so, especially the creative dial. So I got the PenF actually a few months ago because everybody's been talking about it. So I'm like, okay, what's the big deal with this PenF? And I love the creative dial, but I was missing some of the function, some of the computational technology of my OM1 Mark 1 and OM1 Mark 2. But here I had so much fun. So right now it's so cold. I've been having this camera for 2 months, and it's been just the coldest winter uh, for a while. But I've been out having fun. So black and white, popping the red with the color dial. So I've been doing those type of photos that truck very different color again, but I just wanted those red to pop. There's also a famous house that actually is going to be destroyed, unfortunately, very soon, where I live. I think it made it to the New York Times. They had an article on this house if you guys are interested. And same, I had in my mind, I want certain colors to pop, and I'm able to do that. It's like having a mini Lightroom with you. You can even add vignettes, you can pop all the colors, do more architectural shots, and also the art filters. So I know a lot of people think they're very gimmicky. In some situations, they can be. I personally really like them. So it's just when I'm not sure how to approach a scene, just putting an art filter and seeing what I can do. I get a JPEG, I can share it straight away to my phone. This one was actually taken in the Flumes, that's 20 minutes from where I live in the White Mountains, and they have waterfalls, and in the winter they're frozen, so people go and do some ice climbing. So I've been also using the filters there. That's on the seacoast, the same thing with the art filter, the retro look. I love that. I know that they also have a black and white that I use, just boosting the contrast. And you can use Live ND doing this. So I just been having just so much fun with it, and I wanted to show you a couple of other things as well that I've been doing with this camera, because we've been talking about lenses, and I've been using the 100-400. For me, it's funny because you guys have been talking a lot about the wider angle, but maybe because I'm really new to landscape and I'm still kind of trying to find out what I'm doing, I've been really, really enjoying using a telephoto lens like the 100-400. It's been great playing with it and finding more intimate landscape. That's what I've been really enjoying doing. So that's with the 100-400. Same, I'm very far, but I'm isolated my subject and finding shot that I couldn't have made. Same thing. So I had the OM3, and this one I think was the 25 millimeter that I showed you before. Remember that photo with the ice, the waterfall? But then I went with my OM1 Mark II and the 100-400, and just getting tighter and showcasing my subject more. So that's what I've been basically playing with. And what I really, really like is just breaking the rules. So this is the OM3 is a teeny tiny camera, but how about putting a telephoto lens on? Yes, the ergonomy is not going to be ideal, but we talk about stabilization, 3 points of contact. I'm holding my camera with the lens collar. I'm grabbing here with a little grip. I probably get an extra grip to put on my OM3. And then with myself, I have 3 points of contact. Why not? So that's what I actually have been doing. I've been using the OM3 for wildlife. And let me see if I can find a couple of images that I got with it. I actually went skiing with the OM3 and the 100-400, because it's so compact. I mean, it fits so well in my. I have a 7-liter sling bag, and it works very well. I can't. Oh, here it is. So this one, I just took this shot because there was an owl on the path where I was skiing. I had my camera and I had my telephoto lens, and I'm able to get the shot. I wouldn't have been able to get it if it wasn't for how compact my system was. So yeah, those are basically the type of shot that I've been getting lately. Just having fun with the creative dial, having fun with some of the computational feature that I I haven't really used much. I have them on my OM1, but I don't think of using them. So I've been playing with lifetime. I've been playing with even the bulb mode. So that's a very famous hotel where I live. And I thought, I never use the bulb mode. When not using it here instead of live comp. So just having fun and seeing what my camera can do. Even the high res mode, I've been playing with it as well, a little bit more, doing some panorama shot because I can and see what I'm getting. So those are the shots that I wanted to share with you guys. And even actually, I should share with that because Jimmy, you were saying that yes, you want everything in sharp focus. I love candies. I love sweets. So I was at a candy shop, and I had sorry about that because I have a lot of photos, so now I'm trying to find
Okay,
it.
I'll just mention that with the bulb mode, we have something called live bulb, where you
Yes,
can watch the exposure build while the shutter is open. And most camera systems, when you go into bulb mode, the screen goes blank until the exposure is done. So it's a little bit, you have to experiment a little bit more to get the exposure right. But with the, live bulb feature, you can watch a building and then stop when you get the exposure that you wanted.
Yep.
I mean, we are so privileged with this camera and all the technology we have. And there are times where, yeah, I need to focus time because I don't have enough light. I want all those candy to be,
Mm,
in focus. And I can dream about the candy. That's what I feel like this camera is about. This is candy because there are so many treats in it that we can use.
yeah.
And even, live ND. So I use that a lot because we have waterfalls here. So I've been just having a lot of fun with it. But then this camera screams street photography. So why not trying live ND and be creative? You can do some ICM and just play with your zoom. But you can also do street photography here that's using live ND and
Yep.
panning with
Mm,
the car. So just things that I've never really used on my OM1 Mark II, but somehow this camera has been really unlocking some of my creativity for street
yeah,
photography and
and
landscape.
it's I don't know if I mentioned before, but having that CP button right there is the only reason I'm starting to experiment more with these types of features. Like on the one, I just really didn't use them that much. I used the high res shot mode a
Yeah.
lot, but not so much the live ND, the grad, all these other features because you always had to dive into the menu, and that just kind of disturbs my shutter therapy, so to speak.
Yes.
But now it's right there. To quote Robin Wong, is right there. And I just turn the dial and I can, okay, let me do the live ND, let me do grad ND, let me do bulb mode, let me do double exposure, things like that.
It's so easy. And I thought, I'm going to miss some of the buttons because I reprogram everything. If I were to give you this camera, you'll be like, what is happening with this dial? Why is that the ISO, Emilie? Why? Why?
Yeah,
And I find out that, yes, if I have a bowl of M&Ms right in front of me, I'm going to eat them all. If they are in the, in the barn or in wherever far away from me, I'm gonna have to walk to the M&Ms. Here, all the M&Ms are right here. I can access them, and I'm gonna use
yeah,
them. And it's so simple, but it really works. I've been playing much more with some of the computational features uh, on my OM3, and I've been having a lot of fun and just
yeah,
exploring, being more creative. It's been great.
yeah. And so many people they talk about these things, these features, and I get it. To the for the purist type photographer, all these things are kind of gimmicks, right? But I love the gimmicks, and I was really it drives me nuts when Om Systems, takes one of our little tricks away sometimes. Like I used to love being able to take a picture while I'm recording a movie, but that's been gone for a while now. And I could go on, like scene mode is now gone. And I kind of like the scene modes, being able to put a collage together in camera. uh, we used to have that on all the OM system cameras. But I love all the gimmicks, and I love that they put the CP button there to so that I can experiment even more. Like I showed very early in the stream, one of my images where I combined grad ND and a real ND together to get that long exposure, but balanced, et cetera, et cetera.
And
So
Rob, there is one thing too that we never talk about, talking about gimmicky, but to me it's really not, because it's just helping you being more creative.
mhm,
It's the multiple exposure. I
Mm.
don't know
yeah,
why we don't
So
talk
true.
about this enough. I have actually, I don't know, I have one where that I did recently. I'm going to share it again. And so it's a multiple exposure. I went to, this is the one, Mount Washington.
mhm.
And there is a hotel. I got in the hotel, and that was right there. So that's Mount Washington. There is the Mount Washington Observatory, and then the moon rises. But from sky, I can't get that shot. And I'm thinking, wait a
Oh,
minute, multiple exposure. So take a shot of the moon, small,
Wow.
make sure that it works on my frame, and then actually use overlay in multiple exposure. And then I took that shot of the moon, and I was able to then place the Mount Washington the way I want it. That is in camera, multiple exposure. I would never have been able to get that
Yeah,
shot because that shot doesn't exist.
that's an excellent example. And the reason this works is because when you're taking a picture of the moon, the sky around it is pretty much black.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll overlay on top of your lit scene like this mountain perfectly. And
Exactly.
I would have never thought of doing that, you know. I would
It's
have never
fun.
thought of it. But now when I look at it and you told me, because I would have thought that was one shot. But
A
now
lot
that
of
you
people
told
do.
me that it's not,
Well,
now I understand how you did it.
because you also see a lot of people who have a gigantic moon, and it's like, well, that's not true. Just make it like,
Yeah.
yes, that's how it should be really, because the moon is rising, the mountain is quite high up. So this is the shot I'm gonna get. Lisa Kuchara, actually, I've seen a couple of OM system ambassador in the chat. Lisa, Tom Kuchara, and Chris. I know those guys are also doing some fantastic things with all the technology that we have. I know Chris can handheld live comp. He did live comp handheld, not even on a tripod, and it worked. You wouldn't tell. And Lisa does some amazing work too with multiple exposure.
That's if any, for people that are following me on my Instagram, you'll notice that I have more double exposure type shots and more live comp using the computational features, which I hardly ever did before. Now that the OM3 has that button, it just little things like that make it such a little difference. Like we talked about with Thomas, about the execution and the form factor and everything of the OM system, the OM3 in this case, does so well at just letting you be more creative and being more flexible in your photography. But let's talk about a little bit less flexible area of photography with Ben. I hope you have some images ready. Were you able to get those together? Because I wanted to share really an area that people never put together. I mean, and I'm talking about like people that are outside of the astrophotography world, like, don't look at Micro Four Thirds, but people in the astrophotography world, people that are dedicated to it, a lot of them use Micro Four Thirds sensors, dedicated cameras, or Pen-Fs, whatever. They're all over the place, and this is something, but it's a very. This is not some, and I do want you to chime in maybe if there are some computational features that maybe we could add if they're not there already, that help us, that would help in astrophotography. But you go ahead and take over here.
I mean, okay, so we'll look at pictures then. So I'm going to start with these ones here. This I took of our most recent eclipse. This is handheld with an OM1, the 100 to 400. Okay.
Wow.
And I'm actually going to go to the 2026 eclipse that's coming up. It's in Spain. And I don't know, if I'm over my Cancer, I'm going to buy Big White and take that with me and use it. If not, I'll probably ask OM Systems to let me borrow 150 to 600, and I'll use that instead. But because we're going to be on a ship when we see it, so obviously I can't use like something mounted. But this right here, yeah, this was handheld because the clouds were obscuring a lot of it, and then it came out really quick, and I took it.
Wow.
So and then so this right here, this is a picture I'm pretty proud of. This is a very, very faint object that is in space. This is taken with a 4/3 sensor. It's a mono camera. It's called the 1600, which is the same sensor that is in the EM1, the Mark I. It was a Panasonic made sensor. And this was actually the mainstay camera for astrophotography for probably about 5 years straight. Like
Wow.
this was the one that took all the best pictures, okay? And everybody who really got into astrophotography during that time used this camera. But this image right here, this is of a supernova remnant. So these are filaments and strands of basically debris from a star that exploded 40,000 years ago.
Wow.
And it's a very big object. This is only 1/3 of the object. Okay, you could actually, you would need about a 75 millimeter lens to get the entire thing in there. I'm using a 200 here. I think a 270 millimeter lens, focal length. And so, yeah, it's a really big object in space. I mean, if you held your hand out, I think it would just about cover the palm of your hand in the sky. But it's insanely faint. These are 10-minute exposures. And I took a lot of them. I spent 2 months collecting exposures and then stacking them to get this image.
Mm.
And then another cool thing that you see in here is there's a very, very red star kind of on the left third there. That
Yeah.
first I thought that was a problem with the sensor, but that is actually because that's a beta star. A beta star it leaves out only red light. They're kind of unusual, but they're really fun to look at in real life.
Huh.
Now, this right here picture, this was taken with my Newtonian, which is a reflector. That's why the stars have spikes on them. And this was taken with my EM1, or I'm sorry, this was taken with my OM1. I'm looking at the picture data.
Oh, wow.
This is 107 60-second exposures stacked together. And I know one of the questions you have for me, Rob, is, could computational photography kind of enhance our astrophotography? And we already kind of have it a little bit in that when we do high res shot mode, the camera is actually stacking the images in a averaging type statistical method, which is the same thing that we do for stacking our Astro images. But unfortunately, we're limited to, like, I think it's 16 exposures that we can do. I can't do 107 like I can here. So I still have to do it manually. But I think that if that feature kind of got expanded upon a little bit, we could start seeing like exposure stacking, so to speak, done within the camera. So,
Wow.
and then
Interesting.
so
Okay.
that's something that could happen in the future. And this is another picture taken with the OM1. This is the Andromeda Galaxy. The last one I showed you was M30, which was I'm sorry, no, so M105. It's M33. Yeah, this right here is Messier Object M33, and this is the second largest galaxy in the sky that we can see. It is a whole galaxy, and then we have Andromeda, which is the largest one. This one's about 3 times the size of the last one I just showed you. And this is taken with an OM1 as well. There's 94 exposures taken here, but I was using 120-second exposures this time. And in order to do that, I have to use an external intervalometer.
Right.
All right. So I'm going to stop that one, and then we're going to go on to another window here that I have and share this. All right, I'm gonna bring it up to the top though, so that I can see it. All right, oh, and you guys were gonna ask me about sensors and stuff. I cover this sometimes on my channel and everything, but a lot of times, we get harassed a little bit in 4/3 for our like smaller sensors because they say, oh, it's less light, even though I've kind of said that it's not this case. But anyways, sensor technology hasn't stopped progressing. In fact, we're on the verge of seeing a 1 to maybe even 2 stop improvement in high ISO performance yet again. And that is going to be through something similar to this. And I've alluded to it in my channel before, but right now we have micro lenses that basically focus the light towards the sensor. And then we have like the Bayer pattern that goes over the pixels that essentially block a lot of light. Okay, we lose 2/3 of the light that's hitting the sensor as a result of this. But a lot of companies, and there's 3 right now that are experimenting with this nano prism system, which actually redirects the light to different pixels so that we would capture all of the light. And so, that's something that's coming. We're getting closer to it.
Hmm.
But But now this right here, this is an object. This is an Orion. Okay, this is 35 180-second exposures combined, and actually no, it's more than that. It's 73 exposures. But this is a black and white version of it. This is taken with a mono camera. This is taken with that 1600 camera, and then I wanted to show. This is the same image, but like this is when I stack all of the different filters that I use, and this is taken in narrowband. And the beautiful thing about narrowband is that it kind of tells us the story of what's going on in space. And I could go on and on for a while about this, but here's another one. This is the California Nebula, which is actually a very big object in the sky as well.
Wow.
And this was taken in color, okay, with that blue camera that I was showing earlier, that Orion G21, which has the same sensor in it as the PenF. And then here is the same target in the sky, this time taken with the 1600, which is a mono camera, but done in narrowband.
Wow.
And this is something I kind of like to point out to people, is that like the stuff that's in space is mostly red. Okay. And that's because 98, 99 something percent of the universe is in fact hydrogen. And hydrogen is a red color. All right. So if you want to see an interesting image of space, you kind of have to switch to narrowband, because only then do you start seeing a lot of colors in space. And green, by the way, is almost completely absent in space. In fact, a lot of astrophotography software has a filter in it that just removes every bit of green information from the information, because the only thing we pick up in our photos is noise. That's green.
Ah, interesting.
So does anybody have any questions about those pictures?
Well, I think, that the California one, is that the one?
Yeah, that's the one we're looking at right now. This is the California Nebula. This is
the one in all red.
Yeah, this is the color version of it. You can see this star right over here on the right-hand side, the really bright one. That is actually what is bombarding all of this gas with the X-rays that's making this gas glow. Okay?
Wow.
And once we switch to narrowband, you can actually see the hot and cold regions, as well as the parts that are active and inactive. So like you can see inactive hydrogen is shown as more of a red color. And then we have actual active hydrogen is the yellow. And then that blue is oxygen. And oxygen is typically the remnants of something that has been burned. And so that's the warmer sections of space.
Wow, it's fascinating. And these were all taken with basically micro four thirds sensors that we find in our own cameras.
Very old sensors, I might add. The 1600 is now 14 years old, guys. 14 years old.
Yeah. And these are still pretty prevalent in astrophotography cameras, or?
Yeah, you can still buy the 1600 brand new, but like the sensors that they're buying, that's a sensor. It's been out of production for, I think, close to 6 or 7 years now. So like those cameras are being made with sensors that are just on the shelf still. There are no 1600 color sensors left. The only ones that are left are the mono ones.
Okay. Wow. Now,
so cool.
I've tried to capture this California one in my backyard. It's like Bortle 9. For those of you that are familiar with astrophotography, it's basically so much light pollution here. It's impossible. So that's why I wanted to look at this one a little closer, because I've tried this.
This is a tough one with an unmodified camera because it's hydrogen. See, the UV IR cut filter over our sensors, unfortunately, when it gets to the hydrogen spectrum, because it's very deep into the red, is reduced to about 30% transmission. So you're only getting about 1/3, in addition to the fact that you're only using 25% of the pixels on your sensor to pick this up.
Right.
Those pixels are then reduced to about 1/3 of their performance ability in hydrogen. And that's like OM System came out with a an EM1 Mark III Astro version.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that camera.
Yeah, which
What are your thoughts?
I still haven't been able to get my hands on one. I so want one bad. But
Yeah.
it has a modified UV IR cut filter that opens up that section of the spectrum so that an object like this would appear about 3 times brighter, essentially. In other words, it would increase. And because 90% of what's in the space is hydrogen, that means that 90% of your targets that you shoot in RGB or color are going to brighten up by almost a factor of 3.
Wow.
And you know, I've been telling people this for a while now, is that they don't need to leave the entire spectrum open. All they need to do is have a little opening where hydrogen is, and then you could make a UV IR cut filter that would work in the daytime. It would still balance, but then it would still let through the hydrogen alpha light, because that hydrogen alpha band on the spectrum, like there's 400 something units that we can see with our eyes. That hydrogen alpha band is only 2.5 units wide. So you only have to open a very narrow sliver of the UV IR filter.
So like 0.5% of what we see is
in order to let that light in.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Well, speaking of questions, let me do 2 things. One is just let the audience know that if you have questions for any of our guests, to go ahead and start typing them in now. But I wanted to sort of ask you, Ben, and all of you, think about this for a second, is if you had to ask a question to any of us or all of us, what would you ask? Oh, Emilie's ready. I'll let that percolate with you. What do you got?
When are you all coming for a photo walk in New England? Because someone decided that this is what we need to do next. So you are all invited to come in, and I think it would be so much fun. We should definitely do something somehow together. That would be really fun. So this is my question. When?
When?
Rob and I are not that far from you.
That's true.
You are not far at all. We can definitely, you should come over. That would be so much fun.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Emilie, how far are you from Cape May?
I am probably 6 hours, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm up in the White Mountains, so I'm close to Canada, actually.
Okay, yeah, it's about 3 hours from me, and I go there often. And Olympus has an event that they hold there.
True.
Which you guys have seen me interview the head of marketing for OM Systems there.
Okay.
I will next time. I will come down and see you guys there. But I think a lot of people are like, New England. See, that's a done deal. We have to do something.
Okay. All right. Wow. That's that. All right. You got it. How about let's go to Jimmy. What would you ask everyone here?
Oh, okay. I don't know, actually.
Or anyone individually.
Yeah, we'll talk about photo walk though. This for those who are in the UK or in Europe who are gonna pop by London to see the apparently the biggest photography show now in Europe. The photography show is going to be hosting in London Excel this coming week for 4 days. So every major brands are going to be there. Of course, OM System is going to be there. And I'm also going to be speaking for them and also hosting photo walks because we talk about photo walks. So yes, I'll be there every day. And if you're going to be at the show, come and find me and I'll be taking you guys out, a group at a time, I think 10 of you, and you will be given an OM3 with some lenses so you can actually use the new camera and try it all out.
Nice. Awesome. And that's the great thing about OM System is they're very interactive with their customers and photographers, with these kind of events and also with all of the live streaming that they're doing. I'm really impressed with the work that they're putting into the community with the photo walks like you talked about and the live streaming and of course the great ambassadors like you and Emilie out there working with everyone, and not tying you down, right? You can be you, right? You can
Yeah,
be
I mean,
you.
I think like ever since I joined Olympus before system, and I always felt that, you know, I worked with many brands before, and what sets Olympus and Gnome System apart is that they kind of treat everybody like their family. You know, it's just not. I'm not just
Yeah.
about friends; they're almost like family. You know, they treat you well. You go to the stand, you talk to any staff. You know, it's almost like you know them for years. You just like, you know, you can have a really nice general conversation about photography or gear talk. You know, you can nerd it all out with them. You know, it's just, you know, it's
Yeah.
kind of fun thing to do. And whenever you see them in an event or anything like that, and same as ambassadors, you know, like every time everyone that spoke to, you know, they're just great. You know, just I haven't seen any one is, you know, just different to anybody else's. They're all great.
Yeah. I mean, we're all just photographers with like minds and enjoy the craft, uh, and that's kind of what struck me, because I've this year is the first year I've actually worked with OM Systems by getting a loaner, if you want to call that working with them. But they didn't have any demands or requirements. They said, "You want to try the camera? Go ahead," you know. And they're almost apologetic that I had to like fill out a non-disclosure. Like, sorry, we have to do this, you know. It's like, but I get it, you know.
Yeah.
You know, they have a very informal and very human approach to photography and to working with their customers and photographers. And um, that's why I wanted to let me go back over here to Thomas and kind of put it. Did you want to ask anyone here anything, or did you want to have any last words for the audience before we go to the open Q&A?
Yeah, well, well, actually, yeah, you can. Well, I've got one thing. That's really a personal interest of mine. So, who's got their
Ooh.
OM3 pre-orders yet? Because I'm still waiting on mine. So it seems like a lot of awesome.
Right, 1 second.
Oh,
Oh,
Little,
there we
little
go.
hiccup there. Sorry about that.
that,
But go ahead.
yeah, it's really about me. It's probably me who's crashing that. No, really, just jokes aside. But who's got their OM3 pre-orders yet? Because I'm still
Me.
waiting for mine. Really?
Mine is
Oh,
pre-ordered,
Wow.
and it came
yeah.
last
Cool.
last Thursday.
Wow, can't wait to get mine. So seems like there is a bit of a backlog here in Austria, which is a good thing for OM system, but a bad thing for me. So yeah, just wanted to know. But
Yeah.
That's why
maybe
you
that's
pre-order
because
early.
yeah, well, I actually pre-ordered two because I really like to have like one with a telephoto and one with a wide angle for my reportage work. So yeah, but maybe that was too much probably. I should have gone with one, but you never know.
There you go. So I think I saw Ben. Okay, Ben. Yeah, you can
That's
turn your
cool.
heater on, right?
I had to go do two things: get a warmer hat, and
Yeah.
because it's single digits here in this room that I'm in, and then I also need a power cord because yeah, I was down to like 6%.
Oh, but yeah,
Ben,
I was
if
just
you
kind of
ever
asking people, asking the audience here, did you have any questions for any of us, or do you want to have any last words for the audience before we go to a Q&A?
So I would encourage everybody to look something up and kind of study it. It might help you in your photography because I know it's helped me a lot.
Mhm.
And that is to study the 13 elements of art.
Hmm.
Like at my desk at work, I have this really bizarre looking painting behind my desk, and I've had a couple people ask me like, "Why do you have this?" It's like it's a really simple painting, but I have that painting there because it has all 13 elements of art in it, even though it's
Hmm.
a relatively simple picture, and that's why I enjoy looking at it. And I'll name like the first couple. Like the first element of art is the line. And then the next element of art is the tangent, which is where two lines intersect each other. And then you have the value, and then you have the hue, and then you have the saturation, and they go on so forth. And you have perceived space, you have motion in space, you know all these different. And if you look up what the elements of art are, you'll have to look into traditional art essentially to kind of like
Hmm.
find this stuff expressed. But looking for those things in real life will kind of really help you start putting together the different elements of art, and thus create better images, essentially.
Wow.
Looking for the elements of art in your
That's
picture.
great. That's great advice. Wow. I'm definitely doing that after the stream.
Yeah, I actually
Wow.
have a really good book about it, and it's 13 chapters long, obviously, but each one has a painting in it that was done by some famous artist in years past. It's an old book. I think it was written in the 50s, but yeah, he just goes into immense detail on each element of art.
Okay.
In space, because like another type of element of art is actually like lines of gaze, essentially, in something. You know, where is our eye being directed to, as far as like the motion that our eye takes throughout the image? You know, what path does it take? You know, what does it see first, and where does it continue to go to and explore, and how it moves through the image? You know,
Right.
that's something that you should consider when you're building a picture.
Yeah.
In astrophotography, obviously, I'm extremely limited on how I can do this because I can't change my position in space that much.
Yeah.
I'm kind of
Right.
fixed on this one little round ball here. But what I can do is, and this is what I endeavor to do as much as possible, is to increase the dynamic range of my image so much that you start to be able to see the forms and the shapes of the things that are in space. And from that, you can kind of see, okay, well, this is in front of that, and so forth. And you can actually start to see how things actually stack out rather than just seeing it as a flat canvas.
Yeah, that would be awesome, because
Which is
I have
something
no because I have no
do the most
perception
of
of
my I do the most of my narrowband stuff.
yeah.
Doing it in RGB is actually a lot harder.
Wow. Because yeah, I have no perception of when I'm looking at, say, Andromeda versus the California versus the Horse's Head. How far away is each one from each other? You know, in terms of distance, I don't know. They all look like they're just right there. But some I have to do, you know, more exposures. But yeah, that's a great example too. So let me go to, looks like we have a question. This is the first one I've seen about the color creator with the OM3 lunch launch, but realize it's been on other cameras, even going back to the EM1. Okay, yeah, that's true. Do any of you have any advice starting out with the color creator? So who'd like to take that one?
It's
I've got
also
one.
in OM workspace,
Yeah.
so you can play with it there too on the computer.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, because by coincidence, I've got a color creator image right there. I'm going to show that to you. So that's from a model shoot recently.
Oops.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
There we go.
me again. Whoop, is it focusing? Yeah, there you go. That is actually color creator. So what I did is I just, and that's maybe a thing to start. If you've got like one dominant color like red, just switch to a color creator red, maybe turn down the vivid setting like one step, and then just look at it. And I think skin colors are always tricky, right? But when you start with the color creator like that, you notice that her skin doesn't look red at all, right? It's reddish, but not red. So it still looks natural. And that's my main tip for color creator. I would just do that, look for a scene with one dominant color, then put the color creator in there with just the main color, and then take a look at the results. It's really, it's pretty easy actually if you do it that way. I struggled with color creator quite a bit myself, but yeah, that's my tip.
Okay, that's great, because I just started using it more with the OM3 myself. And a lot of times, let me see if I can share. Oh, this will kill two birds with one stone. And I mean that, okay, if I can share a screen.
Yes, please, Rob, don't kill bird
And-
with two. No, as a wildlife photographer, I
No,
oppose.
but this is a double exposure done in camera, and also when I took the images, I used the color creator dial to kind of give this shift to more of a golden hour kind of look, because it was
Wow.
actually a cloudy day, and the light was the camera's auto white balance went to sort of made this scene look very, very gray. So I shifted the color creator dial to sort of the yellows and added some saturation. Then I took one image ICM, and then I took the second image, just the still scene, and then did image overlay in camera to create this. But yeah, otherwise this scene would have been very, very bland. I'll try and share real quick.
And Rob, if you want, I also have like slides with like the color creator so people can understand how it works.
Okay, why don't
as
you do
well.
that while I try to find my example here?
Okay. Do you want to share mine? I have it
Yeah.
right now. So, and that kind of illustrate what Thomas was saying about the red. So for this one, okay, let me put it big. So, whoops, let me go back here, slideshow. So I wanted to isolate the red. So I took down all the other colors and I boosted the red. But that's one thing you can do, but you can also play with your midtone. You can add a vignette, so they call that shadowing effect. And then you can also play with the sharpness and the contrast. So it's basically like having a mini Lightroom. And then you can get the shot that Thomas was showing, or you can also, get that type of shots where only one color is being boosted and the rest is kind of like a more black and white image, and get those type of shots. So if that makes sense, because I think for people it's kind of hard to understand what is this, creative dial and the color dial, and how do you use it. It's like having a mini Lightroom. That's basically it. And you're just fixing everything when you are in the field, and it's less time post-processing, which is really nice because you really are able to have a vision and create it in the field instead of having to wait to go home and then create the vision that you had.
Okay, awesome. I had this one. Whoops. I don't know if that. Oh, I don't know why I'm struggling to share my own screen. Let me try one more time. So this was the camera, basically straight out of camera, and it just adjusted the white balance, right? So I used actually the color wheel and just shifted everything kind of to yellow. And I think this looks, I don't know, it's subjective, but I think this looks a lot better than, this plain grayish kind of scene.
Definitely.
To something more like this. And then I was doing all of these double exposures down here. Here I was just trying to, this one actually I was just using live comp with a real ND filter on the front to do that. And then I was going to blend it together with, say, this image. And then I created, I think it was this one. Where is it? It's probably all the way at the bottom. No. Well, of course I can't see it now, but there's so many things you can do with the same scene, using the OM3's creative features and art filters that I'm just starting to experiment with. So here's the scene with sort of a orange tint, but this is what the camera took, right? Just a plain gray cloudy sky, but then adding like this color to it. gave me the kind of the baseline to create the image that I showed earlier, because I mixed it together with, say, this image, which is just an ICM, intentional camera movement, to create that image that I showed earlier. So that's just a couple examples. I'm going to try and do more. Okay, I lost
Great
my
stuff.
mouse. Okay. And then let's see, there's another one here. It's like from Lauren. What is actually gained by using the OM3 over that of the OM5? The spend is double, but I see no gain for the photographer. Okay. So who'd like to take this one?
Well, technically there is a gain, right? I mean, the sensor in the OM3 is just so different compared to what you get in the OM5. It's debatable whether you really need that in your photography, right? But that's always the case. You can make the same argument for any older camera as well, but there is a huge, huge technical improvement when it comes to the sensor and the processor. And the last thing, I just like to highlight that because that's something very personal I highlighted in the beginning. It's also about having the camera, right? That kind of gives you an emotional response. If that's the OM5, I'd say that's perfectly fine. I love the OM5, got 2 of those. But if it's the OM3 because you appreciate its design and its handling, well, then you have to get an OM3. It is really also this component, right? At least to me. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
No, I agree. For me, I love my OM5, but this is a huge step up.
Yeah.
Like you have some of the technology that you have on your OM1 Mark II. That's an OM1 Mark II. This guy
Yeah.
has a Pen F. I mean, it's not a Pen F, but it's like a Pen F. I mean, that's to me, that's the camera that I wanted. So yes, spend double because you're getting double
At
what you
least,
would
yeah.
get, at least.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Like I'm definitely, that's going to be my go-to camera now. It's the OM3. And just having those buttons, and if you're a content creator also, we haven't talked about that, but for filming,
Yeah.
you get from still to film, and then you can do some hyperlapse or some slow motion. This is so easy. This camera is going to make your life way easier. Whereas with the OM5, I feel like it's a great camera, but I'm always searching and I'm going to not want to go into the menu, and it's not going to make your life easy, and it doesn't have the technology that the OM3 has. So huge improvement to me.
Yeah.
What
No,
do you guys?
I'll just chime in real quick that because this this question came up a lot because I go into the forums and other in the community, and this question comes up a lot where, like, why would you spend double for a camera that you can get just a capable camera or a capable camera new or even on the used market? And my answer was, one, this camera is really pulling at my heartstrings, which alludes to what Thomas was saying, that it has an emotional response. Two, like okay, let me back up a little bit. I have the OM1 Mark 1. I did not upgrade to the OM1 Mark 2 because I just didn't see or wasn't able to justify spending the difference, which would have been at least $1,000, if not more, dollar difference to go from the OM1 Mark 1 to the OM1 Mark 2. But I did buy the OM3. So one, like I said, it was pulling at my heartstrings. I love the design. It's beautiful, the build quality, all of that, right? It's an enthusiast camera. Two, it does everything the OM1 Mark II does. Okay. Because I was curious. I don't have Grad ND on my OM1 Mark 1. And I don't have the color creative dial on my OM1 Mark 1 either. It's on my old Pen F, but the Pen F is hurting for autofocus, and it's 10-year-old camera. So this camera too, number 2 was it does everything the OM1 Mark II does. And then number 3, it's the same price as the OM1 Mark II. So it was like a done deal for me. I had no reason to look at the OM1 Mark II anymore, because the problem I always ran into with the photo walks that I go out onto was I'm going to go out birding, so let me grab the OM1, but I'm not inspired because it doesn't pull at my heartstrings. It's a workhorse camera, but it's great for birding. I'll take it out for birding. But if I wanted to go out and do some regular photography at a local park or whatever, it's always the Pen F. But now I don't have to choose. I can just go out
Yeah.
with the OM3.
Yes.
Now I have a camera that can do some birding, and I have a camera that can do all the other creative things and regular photography that I want to do with excellent autofocus for those things as well that the Pen F just can't match. And so that to me is like I don't have to choose. This is the one camera that does it all. And now the OM1 can be regulated back to what I bought it for, was just to take it out on paid photo shoots, because it has the additional features like, the vertical grip and the hot sync port for the flash, all the things that I would use as a professional in my jobs. But the OM3 is all in one for me. So yeah, there were, I'm sure, OM systems considered options for lower price point cameras with this kind of look and feel to it, but there would be a compromise. So I would have probably bought it either way. But I have a Pen F. I don't need any more compromise. I wanted flagship features in a retro body. So this was, for me, and it checked all the boxes, and that's why we buy new cameras. Specifically, why I bought the OM3, because a camera can check all the boxes for you that you want, and you will pay, that price, whatever they're asking, and you see the value in that. Whereas other people they're so pragmatic. They just look at all the specs, and they don't care what the camera looks like. Like for Leica, you can't see the red dot in your photos, right? And with the OM3, you're not going to see what this looks like. Nobody's going to know you used this camera to take that picture. So some people are very pragmatic, and I can appreciate that. They don't care what the camera looks like. But for me, this checked all of the boxes, including the build and how the camera looked,
Yep.
and etc. So I'm sorry, that was a long answer. But anyway, let me hopefully that explains why I bought the OM3 and why I did not get the OM5. I did not get the OM1 Mark II, even though one was cheaper and one is the same price at the current sale prices. I bought the OM3 because it checked all the boxes for me. And a product is only worth what people are willing to pay for it. And for me, I thought this was a very fair price. Okay.
So mine would be metal body. Okay. The OM5 is plastic. And there's face detect in this that is vastly, vastly improved.
Yes.
So taking pictures of my kids, huge for me. And the other thing is that the menus.
Oh yeah.
You get the new menu system, which is immensely improved over the old menu system. And so if this is your first camera, by all means get this one, not an OM5, because going forward, this is going to be the new menu system, and this will give you the start. You won't have to, if you buy an OM5, if 3 years from now you upgrade to another camera, you're going to have to learn a whole new menu system, and it's going to be the one that this camera has.
Yeah. When you could have just started with that camera and had all of the features right up front. Yeah.
Jimmy, your turn.
Me. It looks good.
Good answer.
I'm so.
Exactly the same way I felt when I first saw the original EM5. I think it's more of an emotional response. Like I said many times to everyone, ultimately camera is a camera. Like it takes the same photo. I mean, all I ever care is about the exposure triangle. Compose and execute my shots. I know we talked about computational stuff. They're great. And everything's cool. But like exactly, just want to echo what Rob said. It's a very personal thing when it comes to camera buying. It's only worth as much as you're willing to pay for it, and just you need to hit that emotional spot for many things. But that's me. Like I know there are a lot of photographers really study and respect and appreciate the specifications and numbers I mean, there are different people, different photographers out there. I totally respect those as well. And equally, sometimes when I see some of those 100 megapixel images, I say, wow, that's pretty cool, right? They can blow it all the way up. It can crop as really, really close. You can still see details, but at the same time, those systems are not for everybody, and you do need a very high power powerful resolving lens to be able to make use of those pixels. If you have a really kind of low end lens attached to a 100 megapixel camera, when you crop it, if you do crop it, you won't see the benefit of it. So like, there's a lot more than just superficially looking at numbers and things, and but I think overall, the OM3 is a great everyday camera that I'm willing to take it everywhere and every time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think let me just pull the question, and I'm gonna go to the next one here. But Lauren was asking specifically for street photography, and I think Ben touched on it, is the face detect, the human detect is also vastly improved in the OM3 over the OM5. Now, if you're just sort of a point and shoot type person, the OM5 is an amazing camera. I think probably the best value OM system has right now if you're a very pragmatic person, very objective, the OM5 is probably the best value camera right now, because it gives you basically a lot of the computational features that you'd want from the OM system, and it's in a compact, lightweight body, and and it still has sort of some design language from the retro camera system. So paying double is like, I think basically the paying double for the OM3, just for the face detect or autofocus might be a bit much for someone like you. And I think that get to OM5, for street. I think it's a very, very good camera, but and their best value right now. So, okay, so the next question here is looks more software driven. I've always used Lightroom only, but curious about using OM Workspace. What are some of the cool features you're able to do in OM Workspace with Olympus cameras for a beginner to OM Workspace?
Okay, sorry, just before anyone answer this question, I have to dash.
Okay.
Yep, my battery is showing red dots now, so it's
All right,
running,
no problem,
running
Jimmy.
low. So it might get cut off in any minute. So I'm gonna say thank you for inviting me, and also it's a great chat. And it's really good to see everybody contributing to the conversations here. It's a great stream, so keep up with the good work, and we can't wait for the next meetup.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here, Jimmy. Really appreciate it, and thanks for staying as
Thanks,
long
guy.
as you could.
Speak to you guys soon. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye, Jimmy.
And I did forget to tell the audience that after I sort of did the main Q&A with the guests directly, that they were free to go at that point, because I can handle the Q&A from there. But I'm thankful you guys could stay longer. But if you do need to go, it's okay, because the Q&A can go a long time sometimes. But yeah, anyhow, did anyone want to take this one, or?
So there's a couple of features in OM Workspace that I think that are pretty cool. So one, there's a focus analyzer tool, which I know we have Pro Capture now, which allows us to take many images. And with Focus Analyzer, you can very quickly in OM Workspace figure out which picture is the sharpest from a set. And I use that one a lot for nature photos. And then also in OM Workspace, you have the ability to collapse pictures into groups based on if they're taken in a sequence with Pro Capture. So I know, Rob, I know you've said several times you don't like coming back with 20,000 photos. Well, with the OM Workspace, you hit that one button, and it's almost as if you went out and you were taking single pictures. Okay, it just and so that's kind of something that I like about that, because it allows me to kind of like quickly sort through. Okay, I know this series was bad. This series was bad. I know this one had a good one in it, so I expand it, find the best one, make that the top, and then I collapse it again, and that way you can kind of keep your pictures more organized. Also in OM Workspace, and I actually did a video tutorial on this a year or two ago. is that with the OM1, we have the neutral density filter. Well, you can actually cheat it and go even further, because in OM Workspace, you can take something and several images that you took. Let's say you take 3 images with a neutral density filter that's digital in there. And then in OM Workspace, you can actually combine those 3 to get almost like 1.5 more stops of neutral density. Maybe it was 2 more stops. And I have a video about how to do it on my YouTube channel. But that's kind of something I think that is an OM Workspace only. And let's see here, lightning composite, focus stacking is something that you can do, of course, in OM Workspace. And there's probably a couple of other ones, but I won't take up too much time. I'll let somebody else talk.
Yeah, I'll just say that OM Workspace is really powerful when combined with the OM system cameras. Like Ben mentioned, the focus stacking, image overlay. It also does the very best job of generating high-res shot files from the camera in terms of sharpness. A lot of software out there is close, but if you're really critical about the reproduction of a high-res shot, OM Workspace does the best job. And then also, of course, you can save you update your camera through OM Workspace, you update your lenses, firmware and stuff. You also can save settings, custom profiles and things into OM Workspace. Sorry. And then, and you're also going to be able to share color profiles that someone created on their OM3 to another OM3 owner or PenF owner, because you can do this with the PenF as well. So there's a lot of little things that are kind of unique to OM systems that you can only do in OM Workspace.
Another very cool one is that you can, through USB, hook your camera up to your computer, and you can use it as another processor.
Yeah.
So if you have an older machine, that can come in real handy, and I've done it. It really boosts the speed. Now I have a really fast computer to begin with. I think 98 gigs of RAM in my computer, and I still see a speed boost.
Yeah, because so basically Ben's saying is you can connect your camera to your computer and it'll act as its own computer, speeding up the processing of the images. So it's a really interesting idea. I haven't seen anyone else do that, where you can plug your camera in and uses the camera's dedicated processing power to process images on your computer. So that's a really interesting feature. Anything you want to add there, Thomas, or?
Yeah, sorry, I was struggling with the audio. No, I think OM Workspace is great. And one thing I'd like to highlight is that the images in OM Workspace look exactly like those you captured in camera. So that makes the whole processing so much easier, especially if you are working in a professional capacity with the camera as well. So I really, really encourage everyone to work with OM Workspace, and it's free. It's damn good for its price.
Yeah, it's free. It's amazing. So let's see. I thought.
And panorama, they do a very good job with the panorama as well with OM Workspace. And with a lot of, you say it's free, there are so many companies who are now boosting their subscription for processing our images, that it's nice to have a free version. So, yeah.
Yeah, and my chat window, I lost my place here. Did you guys? Yeah, so I'm sorry. Yeah, we just answered that one. So yes, you can. What? Oh, Lauren, sailing expand. Okay, so yeah, the 14 and the 45 millimeter lens. I'm sorry, I'm kind of trying to get back to where I was. Something here about grips. Okay, so I'm a fan of grips, though. How confident are you that there will be an aftermarket grip for the OM3?
They won't be out there. But they won't be from OM system. But you're right. They already, someone posted I would. They have a really nice, they have a couple of wood handle that look really,
Mhm.
really good. I haven't placed my order yet, but it's on my list of things to do.
Yeah, something wood something. I saw a black one and a wood grain color one.
Yes, they have a couple of different ones and different shape as well. So I think I've seen 3 different ones for the OM3. And
Yeah, here
someone
it is.
posted the link.
Yeah,
Actually, I would.
Yeah, that's the one. Thank you, Matthew.
Rob, can you show your was your EM5 grip on the OM3?
Oh yeah, I cannot because I'm using it now for the stream.
Oh,
But I took the grip from my OM5 or EM5 Mark III, and it fits on the OM3 just fine. You can't open the battery door because it is a little bit smaller. But yeah, I put the grip from my OM5 onto this. It's just there's just a few millimeters on each side. It's inside a little bit, so you can't open the battery door, but you can still access the everything, and it makes if you like to hold your camera one-handed, it makes a huge difference. So once the actual grips made for the camera come out, it's gonna I'm gonna get that or at least a half leather case. So let's see. Here's one about looks like the M10 is dead. For a few years now, there's been not much difference between the M10 and M5 except the sensor. Any comments on the new 1.8 weather sealed lenses? Prices seem to be a little high. Okay, anyone want to take that one?
Well, I know the EM10 is still in production, and
What? Really?
yes, according to OM Systems, its sales rate haven't really dropped for them.
yeah.
Like it's still
Interesting.
selling at the same rate that it was
Interesting.
the year before.
Okay, so
It's a
I'll
good
make a
camera.
couple of comments about the new lenses. Okay, so the 17 and the 25, a lot of people were looking for the small primes to be weather sealed. So finally that's done. And, it's an IPX1, whatever that means. But generally, you can go out in light rain now with these lenses and not worry about damaging your camera or the lens. Number two is the 25 millimeter has a metal body instead of the plastic. So it's a little nicer feel to the lens itself, and it's going to be a little more durable. And the weather sealing, just kind of adds on to that. Optically, they are the same, right? So you're not going to really see any differences in the actual image quality. So if you don't care about weather sealing, like me, I don't really care about it. If it's cloudy out, I just stay home. But there's a lot of places where it rains all the freaking time. So now you can take these lenses out, and when you think about the actual quality of these lenses, the kind of the sharpness and all of the things that we've talked about, micro four third lenses, I think the price is pretty reasonable compared to really this particular focal length or field of view, where you're getting an excellent build, excellent image quality and design, and weather sealing, I think at a very competitive price. That said, yeah, I would wait for a sale. Personally, I'll wait for a deal. I know at the launch they were giving $200 off the lenses if you bought the OM3. So yeah, but I get it. It's like you want to buy two more lenses, it's another $1,000, right? It's like, oh my God. I've been there many times, but when I look at the lenses, they're offering a lot of they're offering something that a lot of people have been asking for a long time. So finally we have it, and I think it's good to have choices. I'm going to stick with my silver 25 millimeter, lens. Uh, I'm not going to go to the new ones, but like I said, it's good to have choices. And again, a product's only worth what someone will pay for it. So if it checks those boxes and you want weather sealed, it's worth every penny.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's see. Can OM Workspace process images from other cameras? Yeah, short answer is no. It only processes JPEGs. So if you want to edit JPEGs from other cameras, you can, but not the RAWs. The other option is if you can convert the camera images to a TIFF format. I think OM Workspace will work with that, but it's not ideal. You're going to lose a lot of you're going to be able to apply art filters and things, but you're going to lose a lot of the functionality that OM Workspace offers with Olympus cameras. And let's see, besides mic headphone jack, when will USB-C take over? Would enable new things like USB-C hot shoe for connecting in USB-C based EVF, could be extended or replaced with a smartphone. Ooh, I don't see that happening soon. That's more of a camera design language that every company, they're kind of stuck in the past. In that sense. And they do need to expand.
Talking about USB headphones, USB external monitors, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's just, I mean, I don't see that coming because you'd have to add, I'm not that technical, but you'd have to add some sort of data chip to manage the data through the USB-C port. So I think it's a matter of finding a company that would manufacture a dedicated chip will work with camera related type features like hot shoe and mic or headphone, whatever. Because smartphones, you can't just put a smartphone chip into a camera, right? Because it's gonna make the camera too expensive. You're adding a lot of features that you wouldn't need in a camera that a phone could do. Panasonic's touched on it a little bit, being able to attach a USB-C drive, like an external hard drive, to your camera. But what's going to have to happen is they're going to have to develop a chip specially for cameras for just very specific features, and to do those features well. A phone is a very different animal with different processor, because a lot of the heavy lifting is done by the phone's Snapdragon or whatever processor, and the USB-C port is programmed to the Snapdragon or whatever processor is in the phone. A camera would need a dedicated chip to do that, or a whole redesign of their processor to handle these kind of features. So I think we're years off from doing it, but I could be wrong. Maybe tomorrow somebody will release a camera that has a USB-C port that does everything. So those are my thoughts. Did anyone have anything else on that, or? Okay. And let's see. Lots of people getting their OM3. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
I'm new to using weather-sealed lenses with my EM1 Mark II and EM5 1.1. Is there anything I need to check before I actually take them out in the rain, or is it safe to think that they'll work?
Well, both of those camera bodies are weather sealed. So if you're putting a weather sealed lens on there, then you're good to go. There's one thing I would caution, and it's not really relevant at this point. 5 years from now, if you're watching this video, it will be relevant. And that's that the seals in these cameras do dry out eventually.
Yeah.
Like, for example, my Olympus E1s that I have, they're weather sealed. There was a guy who about 8 years ago did a test. He submerged one to see how long it would work submerged. I think it was 1 minute and 22 seconds is how long it lasted. Submerged. So there are people that used to take the E1 whitewater rafting. Today, I would never do that because the seals in the cameras, they dry out, especially if you keep your gear in an air-conditioned environment. Air conditioners, they suck the moisture out of the air. The last house that I lived in, which was a 900 square foot house, removed 12.5 gallons of water from the air every day.
Crazy.
Wow.
That's why your skin's so dry. It's not because you need lotions and stuff like this. It's because our internal climate control systems in our houses have a condenser on them that has no limit. It just runs, and it will dry out your camera. It will dry out anything that's rubber. That's why it starts. You look at your old gear and it has cracks in the rubber. It's from the drying environment.
Yeah,
that it's in.
and just a side note, there's a lot of old rubber on old cameras that get this white powdery kind of thing, and that's
Oxidation.
actually a sign of good rubber.
Yeah, it is.
The cheap rubber that cameras manufacturers use sometimes, those will crack a lot sooner and get hardened. But the good rubber actually starts to get white powder. But that's the actual sign of a really good rubber, using good rubber on there. I got to stop saying that. Okay, so.
And one thing just to add, if you're doing that, you're going outside, just cleaning 2 different cloth, one for your lens, and the rest for your camera, but don't mix them up because you're going to introduce some grease and things on your lens. So make sure you have 2 dedicated one, maybe different colors, not both white.
Yeah. Is there any book literature recommendations that you have for astrophotography, Ben?
I do. Let me grab it.
And why Ben grabs it, you had a question about the peak design clutch. I think that would be a great option. I've seen it. I think it would work well on the OM3 because someone had that question and you had it.
Yeah, I had this one up. I'm not familiar with peak design, but thank you, because I couldn't tell if that was a question or a comment because I'm not that familiar with the peak design. So
yeah, that would be a great option.
Okay, thank you for answering that, Emilie. So books, what do you got, Ben?
Okay, so the absolute best one is the Deep Sky Imaging Primer. I have one, but it's in the house, and it's by Charles Bracken. And the 3rd edition is currently out.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's see here in the chat. Can I post the name in the chat?
I don't know if you can do it from your end.
Oh yeah, I can only read them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Charles. If you look up Charles Bracken, he actually lives not very far from me. We're friends. He's in Pennsylvania where I live. So, but yeah, he's written, and I've read just about every single astrophotography book there is out there. His is the best.
Okay. I am looking. This is the worst. This is the hardest part for me, is finding questions in the chat in the right order. Yeah, there's lots of questions about Bluetooth microphone. Yeah, these are all things that I can't really answer, but
Bluetooth headphones would be so nice.
Yeah, I mean, that we're probably closer to that than the other things with USB-C.
Yeah,
because that's just simply a software thing, because they have the Bluetooth chip in the camera, and I believe it's 5.1. But in any case, but they decided not to activate that. But I could see that being a firmware update. But I have not heard anything about that at all, because for videography it wouldn't be practical because of the sync delay between Bluetooth and the video track. So it would introduce more problems than it would solve, I think, by using Bluetooth for microphones and headphones in a camera that's actually recording the media at the same time, unlike a lot of the devices we use simply for playing back media. And that syncing issue is not, is irrelevant, right? That's my thought. I'm just pulling things out my butt here. So, you guys got to vet and what's the word I'm looking for? You got to do your own due diligence on anything that's ever said online, because just because we say it here doesn't mean it's true. But we do our best.
There's a question about light pollution filters for the 12
Okay.
millimeter and
Oh, I see that. Yeah.
and 12 to 40. Which do I have my? What filter size is on that?
62.
62 on the 12 to 40.
Yeah. The 12 millimeter, I think, is a 46, but
Yeah.
not sure. Might be a 37. I don't remember.
Dang, I actually cannot think of any off the top of my head that are for a screw-in filter for a lens, but there are plenty out there though, and they're typically broadband filters, and what they try to do is they try to suppress certain wavelengths that were more prevalent in older types of lighting. Unfortunately, broadband filters are starting to become less efficient, and that's because of LED lights, which are full spectrum. In other words, they emit light all across the spectrum of light, which is a terrible thing because it's what's causing our bee populations to decrease.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you telling me about that. So yeah, because of the predominance of LED lighting now in our street lights, in our shop lights, we're not having that same sort of tungsten or green glow that these filters used to block.
Yeah, because they would emit a light that was a very specific spectrum because they were chemically based.
Okay. Then here's one from Bern. Says, hi friends from Germany. For my OM1 Mark I, I would like to use the Panaleica 9 millimeter. Are there some disadvantages regarding internal corrections in the Lumix cameras compared to OM systems? So this one I can't answer. Anyone got one? I mean, I can give it a shot, but.
Yeah, I mean, I've got one. I've used it with the OM1. It works like it's supposed to work because of the Micro Four Thirds standard. Lens corrections are there. But I'm afraid I have to take this opportunity to make a run for it because I'm losing all my equipment right
Okay.
now. Everything's
Yeah.
blinking red now. I'm just shouting into the laptop's microphone at this point. So sorry for the audio.
No worries. But thank you so much, Thomas, for coming in. Really appreciate you staying as long as you can.
Oh yeah. Well, I appreciate the invitation and joining all of you here. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so great.
Okay.
Thanks.
We'll be in touch again soon, Thomas. Keep going, and I look forward to seeing your new videos on the lenses.
Yeah, and I see one last thing there, Marco. Yes, I do use OM system gear for everything. So boudoir, everything.
Oh,
Go check out
okay.
the stuff.
Great.
Friends,
Thank you,
so
Thomas.
much.
Take care.
Bye, Thomas.
Bye, Thomas.
Nice seeing you. There is one question from Zoran about favorite macro lenses, non-OM. I have to say, I only shoot OM lenses. That's it. Why? Because for macro, I want to make sure that everything works correctly. So my flash is OM system and all my lenses are OM system. I don't need anything else. Like the 90 millimeter is my go-to. Absolutely the most brilliant lens ever made for macro, in my opinion, with the magnification. But you can get even some used 60 millimeter. Excellent. It's also another one of my favorite lens. The shot that you've seen earlier on in this live were taken with the 60 millimeter macro. So I do some refraction with it. But I mean, there is also the 30 millimeter. Look at that. So small, great for mushroom photography. So I just really like the M-Zuiko. I like the quality of those lenses, and they give me everything that I need for. So I haven't looked at some other brands. I know there are other brands who are making some good lenses, but for me, it's all OM system. I don't want to mess anything up personally. I don't know. Maybe Rob, you have different answer.
No, I've not used any macro lenses on OM systems that that are not from OM systems. In fact, I haven't used any macro lenses. I tried one once. I'm not really a macro person. A good channel to look at, though, is, I think it's, oh, God, his name escapes me now. I'm sorry. There's a guy on YouTube that does basically 99% macro photography. Last year he purchased the OM1 with the 90 macro, but he has a lot of reviews on macro lenses that are third party. I don't know if anybody can remember his name or not, but I'm sorry, I can't remember.
I know
But if
Robert
you,
Wan,
huh?
Robert Wan did a review on a macro lens that he really liked. It was a Chinese-made macro. It's manual
Yeah.
focus and everything, but he liked it.
Okay. So yeah, I'm sorry, I can't give you a direct answer on that one. Okay, so what I want to do is, why don't we go ahead and wrap it up, because we're hitting 3-hour mark, and I'm really sorry. I kept time just gets away from me sometimes when we get into the chat section.
There's
and
one
start
question.
talking.
Can I answer it quick, Rob?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was asking about where can we find your Bortle scale level, which is the light pollution level in your area. So if you go to lightpollutionmap.info, there's a map there that you can basically click on your location exactly, and it will tell you exactly what your Bortle sky class is. And it'll even give you the history of that zone, like whether or not the light pollution is going up or going down, or if it's at peaks and valleys in the past couple of years. So,
Okay.
lightpollutionmap.info.
Oh, and
And
then
Stewart
while you were talking,
Woods.
I got the Michael Wydell. I'll put a link.
Michael, yeah.
Yeah.
And Stewart Wood is also another one that you should look for. He also switched recently to Hui's OM system. Excellent macro photography.
Okay, great. So check those out. But Ben, Emilie, the last people standing.
And before we end this live, okay, I
Yes.
want to invite both of you. I know, Rob, you say you don't do macro photography, but with a couple of other ambassadors, so Lisa Kuchera, Tom, we also have Chris, Steve Morello, and Eric Rock. We started doing OM system retreat. So we have a macro retreat coming up in September. It's 3 days, complete immersion with all of us. Last year was so fun. I'm going to put the link in the comment. So you guys are more than welcome to join us. And then it's not out yet, but I'm going to say it in your channel. We're going to do a nature retreat. So it's in Maine. And it's going to be the same 3 days with a couple of OM system ambassadors. And we are going to do different type of photography. So macro, landscape, night photography. So you should come. That would be so much fun.
Wow, I'll definitely keep that in mind. I have some challenges traveling in general, but people that watch my channel know I'm not really big on travel. But I don't even
But
have
traveling to Maine is very different. It's going to be an easy travel. And then in Maine, it's so peaceful. We are in a beautiful farm. It's a very nice environment. I think you will have a lot of fun with us.
Okay. I'll make an effort this year to get out more. I need to get a passport too. I need to learn how to take a train.
No need to passport to come to Maine.
Oh, I know.
Come and
But there's just a whole list of travel-related things I've never done. Never been on a train. Haven't been on a plane in like 25 years. You know, things like that. I don't think I've even left. I have not left like within a couple hundred square miles of where I live in at least 10 years. I think Ben is the longest trip I've taken to Ben's house. Is the longest trip I've taken in the last 10 or 20 years. Oh, I remember now. 1999. That is the last time I left my area.
You got to get out more, Rob.
Yeah, I drove down to Florida. And then one time in May of anyway, Thank you so much, Ben. Any last words, and then we'll kill it here.
That's it for me.
Okay.
I'm gonna
That's
go
it for
warm
me
up.
too. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for coming in today. Thanks everyone that joined us today in the chat section. You know, you guys are awesome. You guys are what help us to help you and make all this possible. I love the community we've built with Micro Four Thirds. And I look forward to seeing all of you again in the live streams, at the retreats and workshops. So thanks again, and I hope to see you all again soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.